13th, 2014 at 7 p.m. in Houghton Building in Bolton. And first up, I guess we had a cancellation at 7 o'clock. The Conline Capital decided they needed more time to respond to the consultant's report. So I guess we're going to use this time from 7 to 7:30 to discuss questions we might have for the Tennessee Gas Pipeline Company.
Okay, and do you want to, while you've just sort of opened that on Condyne, to continue that hearing so we don't forget to do that?
Okay, right. So how do I do that formally and say?
Yeah, so, no, you can say, you know, because they've asked to continue it.
Okay.
And I did in an email tell him that our next meeting was July 15th, and he thought that, I think he thought that would be adequate time.
Okay.
So on July 15th, we have some other new public hearings. So it'd have to be after, like, 7:45 would be the earliest.
Okay. So why don't we continue the Condyne Capital public meeting on the notice of intent on July 17th, is that what you said?
July 15th.
15th at 7:45 p.m. So now we can move on to the pipeline. So people get a chance to read all of this. We have a lot of material. Did anybody get a chance to look at any of it?
Not all of it, sir.
I read through it all at various times. I don't know that I retained everything, but
Well, I did notice that at least one of them claimed that the pipeline company didn't have a right to waive or violate any of the
right.
conservation restrictions, which there's probably some disagreement on
Yeah, and I think, that, you know, some of the questions that I phrased were not taking the position that they were going to go through eminent domain. You know, but if you went through eminent domain, I think they can take the land with the conservation restriction as through eminent domain. I don't really understand what happens to the restriction and the conditions, you know, the prohibited uses and so forth.
But that's like a hurdle they have to jump over before they can go. I think I thought that the thrust of what you said was that people didn't have to agree to let them survey their land because they were essentially breaking the law. And I don't know what sort of hurdle the company would need to go through in order to kind of override that, the conservation restriction requirements.
Yeah, that's why that's why those are questions, because
Right,
I don't know the
and
answers
we have,
either.
I guess the questions we need to come up with is, assuming they go over those hurdles, what would we want to know from them about the pipeline, how it's going to be installed and managed, what sorts of chemicals they're going to use, what are people going to know, what are people going to be told about the installation and management and chemical control of the vegetation over the line.
Well, and I think there's lots of, in addition to that, I did have a question that came up from a resident that, you know, talked about long-term management, about, you know, what if the pipeline divides the watershed?
Oh.
You know, and so how would that, you know, potentially impact, from a Conservation Commission standpoint, how might that impact, you know, your habitat or your wetlands or anything like that? Where if it's not flat for some reason, it's raised because it needed to be above ledge or whatever, you know, reason, then is there a question about that kind of thing? And then there was another, related to that was a question about maintaining, you know, if there's runoff off of the pipeline and it caused ponding and flooding in an area that wasn't a wetland, and they create a wetland, you know, is there a way of maintaining that area so they're not creating, you know, a new wetland area, as well as if you needed to dig or trench or move water across, like say it was an agricultural property and you needed to, you know, use water that had been on one side and you needed to keep it flowing in another direction, you know, but the pipeline got in the way. You know, can you dig things through there? Can you, you know, put in tiles? Can you, you know, so there's things that beyond just the sort of the vegetation management, I think, too, that we want to.
Yeah.
Has anyone asked officially whether they've considered using the interstate highway right of way?
Well, I framed, sorry, I don't want to take yours. I framed the one question in the form of, let me just see here. There was, I think it was related to Article 97, that this is the second question I had there. So if you are going to Article 97, the disposition of that land, the conservation land, looks to avoid, I mean, that's the first thing you're supposed to do is look at avoiding, the disposition or diversion of public land. So I asked the question, what has been explored? Oh, and then, sorry, I went further. So you're supposed to avoid it, and then you're supposed to have explored and found no feasible and substantially equivalent an alternative exists. So the question was specifically identify what alternatives has been explored and why no feasible or substantially equivalent alternative exists. So just taking that.
Well, are they even proposing a specific placement, an absolutely specific placement of the line, or are they just saying they need to go?
There's a proposed,
They proposed, they contacted us for the survey, and he's got the plan.
So, sorry, this is 117. So this is like all the Davis farmland. And then that's where Wattaquatic meets Old Bay.
Right here?
Yep, yeah,
Okay.
that's Wattaquatic, that's Old Bay. So it basically goes across the back of the orchards there.
Oh, north is the other way. So we'll have to look at.
Sorry.
So Janet, that map is based on their proposed survey route. So those are the property owners that they contacted to survey, to see if that's where the line could go. So they didn't contact anyone 25, 100 feet over, or whatever, up to the other properties. They were to either side of that.
Yeah.
Those are the ones so that's the line that we're assuming that they feel is the best going to suit their.
So this is where I think our legislators can possibly be of help to say that in the event that there is available a state or federal highway right-of-way, that be the preferred route, unless it be shown that it's not practical.
But I think we need to really focus tonight on just the questions, not on what else we can do, because they have to be in tomorrow. I'm not working tomorrow, I'm taking my daughter to an orientation, so I have to submit them tonight after we're done.
Okay.
So, I guess, what I would just add is, so, I know, there's a lot of people already submitting their questions, and Brian mentioned that he might have some of his own questions. I don't know if you feel like then you wanted to submit them as an individual, or whether you want to add them as conservation.
I was looking through some of the questions, and you did a great job. Like, you hit a lot of the really good, a lot more than I thought of. I was getting rid of any of the conservation ones that were in my personal questions, so that should probably come from us. I had more homeowner ones.
Yeah, so you can
I just
submit that
have 3 or 4.
separately then.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'll do.
And did you have any in here that you wanted to see reworded or add on?
No, and
or-
I read through them quickly, I have to
Yeah.
admit. But they, you hit a lot of the high points, a lot of things that other people are asking them too.
Yeah.
It's going to be difficult. It's a question of follow-up. You never know what's going to happen, but I know a lot of people are worried, and rightfully so, that, a lot of the questions, they just kind of dance around. You never really get an answer,
Yeah.
which is fine.
I think that-
at least we can ask the question.
I thought that it was good to even think about what this means and what the process is by asking the question whether or not it, if they chose to answer, only ask, I don't know how many out of the 60 here that they might choose to ask, but,
Right.
Say they did and say they used the language, then it may just make people think, okay, so what does this mean? What is the Conservation Commission saying that the public land is of value for public use, and it's meant to be there in perpetuity to serve a purpose, whether it's clean air, or whether it's recreation, or whether it's habitat, all those different things. So I just thought, whatever ones they choose to use, hopefully it would stimulate enough in the audience even that they would understand something a little bit more, so that they could maybe ask other questions if they decided to, enter into an agreement, or, or if the town decided to fight it some other way, if they would understand why, I don't know, that was sort of.
Are these ordered in a particular way? Like
Not
first
really.
Okay,
No.
Do you want to order?
No, I
those?
can't do that tonight.
Okay. No, I just didn't know if there were ones that you think were like the most critical ones, because there's a lot here and I don't know if there's like.
I don't feel like I can do that after the meeting tonight and still get it in, so otherwise, I mean, I would have, I tried to work on getting these questions together for a long time, and I couldn't get the time, I had to do it at home, and I had to do it, you know, after regular hours to even put anything together. The office has just been too much to, you know, to have the.
Yeah, and writing them, like I read through some of yours, because it was like, oh yeah, she words this better than me, writing them in an intelligent way, it's not easy.
Well, I repeated the first part of each phrase, like in several of them, which I thought was a little bit overkill, but I don't know how they're gonna frame the question. So if they only chose certain one, I didn't want it to be out of context, you know, so that was why I kind of added the, you know, the proposed lateral line from Bolton to West Worcester, you know, and just kept that as the, you know, the same thing in each of those. But there were some questions that I didn't end up having time to sort of really write more about, and one was vernal pools, one was flood storage. The public trust doctrine, I just don't know enough about, and I haven't had time to research it. And then, as I just mentioned, the question that came up about watershed divide and about really flooding and ponding and use of, you know, creating wetlands and not, you know, and if you had a wetland that you were using, like on an ag field, you know, could you continue to use that kind of thing?
Do you know if they do?
So I'd like to add those, I guess.
I had, and this was just homeowner questions because it had more to do with well and septic, but I don't know. I mean, they're gonna have to blast to put it in. What effect that would have on the water mains?
I did ask that question too.
Yeah, it wasn't there.
Yeah. Let me see if I can find it. Just don't remember when, but you want to ask your question, Janet? while
No, I was just
look?
gonna say, basically, they need to do an impact study on how they're gonna impact the water and wildlife habitat.
Well, I asked that question too in here because,
Well, then I guess another thing you might have asked, I don't know, what about ongoing monitoring of impact?
I don't think I asked a lot about ongoing monitoring.
What do they do now as far as what's going through town, as monitoring?
They monitor it via a central system. So basically, if there's a leak in the line, it's gonna tell them at their computer. And
So
apparently
they
say
monitor
something.
the gas, not the
So I was
effects
thinking though
of the
specifically
pipeline.
during.
I do not know. I wonder if they probably the throughput, you know, depending on how much drops off.
I was wondering specifically though, monitoring
And so they
important
don't-
wildlife
they don't
habitat, like
monitor
the
the
vernal pools, the
effects
impact of amphibians, which
the
I think
pipeline,
would
the
be
pipeline
great, most
development has
impact of
anything
all
here.
wildlife.
Correct.
Are they gonna somehow monitor
Which,
impact on
I mean,
that?
we don't care about the
Will anybody
pipeline,
be
that's their
looking at
problem.
the vernal
Yeah,
pools?
correct, yeah.
Look to see if they continue to be
And they
dysfunctional.
We care about the
access.
impact.
Right, they want to
Okay, I
have
can
access to it.
try to add something on that one because I don't think I have that.
And then, you must have had in there, or in this one, what sorts of chemicals would be used to control the vegetation?
Let me put it down because I can't
Or
remember.
will it be revealed?
I think it was.
Oh, I think it was in there, yeah.
Yeah.
Do you already know that from what they use now?
Well, I know that well, there were two things, and I don't remember the details really to be clear about it for you, but you should remember that they came through and had some corrosion problems, and one was at the corner of Sugar Road, and then there was another one further down on Long Hill, and then there were some other things. So, you know, that kind of work, they came in with equipment, you know, they did give us notification. I don't think that there was anything really bad that happened from it, but, you know, there really isn't any oversight by anybody. You know, they say, oh, yeah, we think we'll be there within the next few weeks, and, you know, they kind of go and do their thing. They also have like all the rights of ways sort of have a yearly operational plan, and I don't remember if they specifically file one or not, but the typical thing, one of the things I remember they came through and they said that they were going to, you know, use manual removal of vegetation to the greatest extent possible, but then if they can't, they're gonna use, you know, like Roundup or, you know, sort of your more typical.
Didn't they ask
Herbicides.
you whether you wanted Roundup used on your property or not, and you could actually opt out if you didn't want it? When they came through the last time on Barrett's Hill in that area?
Well, you may be remembering that better than I do. The Barrett's Hill one, I don't remember with chemical.
Yeah.
What did you say about that, Laura?
I was thinking, when they came through, you could opt out, because didn't they come through conservation land and we had opt out on the use of?
The only reason I'm confused is because we also had all the right-of-way stuff
Mhm.
that I just can't remember whether we did on that one or not. But you might be remembering it because,
And Laura, do you
You know,
think you
that
could
might be
opt
right.
out and then they had to manually keep the vegetation?
so the question maybe is, you know, can you opt out?
So-
Yeah.
which I really don't remember, but we can ask it again, you know.
And then mitigation, I don't know, I mean, that's something that has to come after. I mean, what do they do for mitigation? Is it like for like? I mean, if they're destroying a vernal pool, do they have
They
to create
pay
that?
you X amount of dollars for
Or is it money?
acreage.
Is it just money? or
Well,
is-
to take the easement or to enter into an easement, they would give you, well, see, I don't know with conservation land, it's a little different, because in some of the questions that I asked in there is because the way, again, you know, minimizing the amount of area is supposed to be considered. I mean, so if you go through a typical disposition of conservation land, there's all these policy requirements that you're supposed to follow, and so if they do eminent domain taking, I don't know how much of that they have to follow, but again, using those as guidelines, any funds are supposed to be provided for equal or greater value, either for land or for doing some, you know, for preserving and using that land. So I'm not sure how it works, you know, but it's supposed to go into a special fund if it goes through the normal disposition.
Did we ever find out what the surveying entailed? We were trying to figure out at one point how invasive the surveying would be. 'Cause I had one question framing kind of around that, just saying, well, I think I framed that a lot of cities are currently fighting their whole northeast expansion, and if they're not able to carry their main line to the coast so they can export it and decide to cancel the whole project, will they still be will they pay for reforestation and repatriation of anything they've begun work on?
Yeah, so that's a good question, and I don't have it framed the same way. I think I had asked the question, how did I ask?
So that's the purpose of the pipeline, it's not to bring it in, it's to export it. Which
they-
direction
you know,
is it?
they'll argue. Well, it's funny, they wanted to get it to New York for export, and the state of New York said no. So
From here?
They're trying to get it to Boston,
They're trying to get it to New York from where?
from upstate New York, right? It's the Pennsylvania shale fields.
That's not going through here.
What? No, that's going through. We're the upstate New York, Pennsylvania shale fields. Is the gas they're bringing into Massachusetts now. They have a northeast expansion that's hitting part of Mass, but their ultimate goal with it is it brings it to the coast so they can change it to liquefied natural gas and export it, and just make it a world commodity, which would bring prices way up.
Not necessarily true.
No, not necessarily
It
true.
also has significant.
But
political-
historically true.
It also has
Like
significant.
in every case, right?
It also has significant political and foreign policy considerations.
It does. No,
Which
that's
are not
very true.
trivial.
No, which is very true. Which is very true. But to your point, it sounded like they really want to get that whole northeast expansion, and the spur lines, this being one of the spur lines, is part of it. So if they cancel the major project, are they going to still do the spur lines?
Yeah, so the way
If the big part of it's dead, are they just going to give up on all of it? I guess.
The way I had framed the question, which isn't really, is a little different than yours, and so you should ask yours the same way, but I had said the survey permission form does not lend itself to negotiating any conditions to allow the survey under specific conditions. You know, would Tennessee Gas honor any conditions imposed by the municipality or private landowners? Because, again, that's all we had is with that form, you know,
Yeah.
so that's what they wanted us to sign if we were to, after their meeting, say, sounds like we could sign the survey form. We still don't have that answer, you know, like, so would they restore, or would, you know, or if they didn't do it. So your question's a little bit beyond that, so I think you should ask
Okay,
it,
so
but
then, yeah.
that's how I asked it, and
Yeah.
it was just to see, you know, if they'll answer it.
I was gonna say maybe it'll get at least good debate. We'll figure out a little bit more about what the survey actually
Yeah.
is. You know, if it's just two guys going through and surveying, or if they actually bring.
Well, I mean, what it says on the form, you know, is that it could be for drilling, they could bring in a drill rig. And then
Yeah.
the guy who came in, you know, sort of said, no, they wouldn't, because they probably wouldn't do directional drilling, you know, on that open land, that it was more for crossing a stream or crossing a road.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
but on the other hand, if they encountered ledge and they wanted to do directional drilling or something, I don't know. So so that's the part, the conditions, you know, I don't, if you said, you know, yeah, you can come in and serve as long as it's just field crew, you know, and you take down all the flags and stakes, you know, within a year, you know, or whatever,
Yeah.
you know, if you made, because we talked about some of those sort of reasonable conditions, but it was never clear whether they'd honor them, you know,
Right.
because nobody came to talk to us. No, we weren't able to ask the question other than through their land negotiator, and he couldn't come to talk to you, and he couldn't tell me honestly that they could honor them. I mean, it was just sign the form.
Okay.
So what else, any other ones that you
Well,
want
I was
to?
asking invasive species. I kind of feel like we should have one from the Conservation Commission.
I think I did, but let me look for it.
Was that you or this person that said, how are they going to prevent introducing invasive species via the equipment?
I don't think that was me.
It is, it's in this one. Especially since Randall is pretty pristine.
So along your question about the blasting, I just found the one, I'm not answering that question now, but
Sorry.
will there be blasting of ledge on any municipal conservation land or conservation restricted parcels in Bolton? If yes, how close can blasting occur to vernal pools? If yes, how close can blasting occur to private wells, homes, and subsurface sewage disposal system?
Didn't we discuss two-way planning? Isn't that our primary water too? Our waterway.
Our aquifer?
Aquifer, thank you. Isn't that our primary aquifer?
Well, I think it's, that's a
It's
question we were
17,
talking about with the
yeah.
planning board.
Behind Bolton Orchards, right?
Well, really
No,
more
that's
towards
the
110.
over here.
Yeah,
Oh,
more
I'm
towards
sorry, I'm wrong,
110.
but yeah. But yeah, well, I guess it's
I don't know, it still
Far
could
enough
be,
away.
but I'm not,
It's right there.
it's probably far enough away. Possible.
So I said invasive plants often find their way along disturbed areas and edges of undisturbed habitat. How will Tennessee Gas prevent invasive plant species from being established in Bolton along the Tennessee Gas corridor? That was my question.
Well, to specifically brought in by the equipment, I think that's a common way that they get spread around. So how are they going to prevent them from being introduced and spread via the equipment? What were you going to say?
I was just gonna say that.
So,
Now, is this thing underground so you could?
Presume so, yeah, it's an underground.
So putting it across a conservation parcel doesn't block access?
well, I have that question in here, with block trail access. I mean, I guess, you know, I don't know, because I've never walked the entire pipeline up in here, whether or not there's areas that it's, you know, it's more mounded because of, you know, ledge or something underneath. I just don't know if it would come up. You know, if it's high groundwater, I mean, some of the questions that we had about, you know, they like to put pipes in the wetlands because of the buoyancy, but you have, or because of the corrosion issue. Is that what it is, or the alloy, it's something to do with the alloy? But, you know, you need to know about the buoyancy part. So that question was asked, I think, in the comments that we received.
It's a disaster to have it in a wetland, and then you're treating it with herbicides to keep it.
Well, if you remember the site visit, I don't know, maybe we're on the site visit that we did for Sugar Road.
Road, yeah.
You know, the gas pipeline goes right through their property and right through the wetlands, you know. and-
Doesn't make it any better. I mean,
No, I'm
it's
just
been
saying,
done
I mean,
before, yeah.
you know, it has been done, you know,
Yeah.
and I guess they like to do that.
And, you know, and it seemed to regrow pretty well there too.
Yeah.
You know, around it. You know, at least in that section where it
Well,
was
there's
underground. It's hard
definitely,
to
yeah,
tell,
there's a
but
lot of invasives too over there, it was hard to
a lot of
say.
invasives over there.
I remember getting a tour of Norfolk Naval Base, where there were pipes that were several feet off the ground. And the tour bus driver, who was from the Navy, said, "You may wonder why we have them up so high." And the answer is so the Marines don't trip over them. But she was from the Navy, so you might expect that.
Yeah, so they're really.
I think Greg had a question.
Well, I was just gonna offer that I sat on the Lunenburg Conservation Commission when
Tennessee Gas expanded the line going up from Lancaster to Bolton. It was a 7-mile pipeline project, and it wasn't as big as this one, but it was, you know, it was a pretty good sized pipeline project. And they do, they directional drill under ponds, but it's never above grade. You know, it's all done now, and it's been done for 5 years, and it's, you know where they went because they had to clear vegetation. But they, you know, they do a pretty good job restoring. I mean, I haven't seen a lot of the wetlands. I got off the commission before they did the project, but they right through, and they do put it below grade, and they do a pretty good job restoring things, but,
So I just find that interesting where we had such trouble over here with the school doing directional drilling, and that didn't go that well, you know?
Yeah, well, you can't do it, you have to choose your soils. You can't do it with those big rocks and ledges.
Well, so that's the thing, is that some of the conservation area over in Randall Road has a lot of
Really,
outcrop,
really
you
big.
know,
You
and,
can't really do it.
yeah, but there's also vernal pools and wetlands, you know, and so we don't really know how that.
And, yeah, I mean,
Well-
the places in Lunenburg where it was ledge was an open cut, and it was a, you know, it was a big deal.
Well, I guess I was
So they
also,
blasted.
So a lot of the places in Lunenburg were diggable ledge. I mean, you
Oh.
could excavate it, you could hammer it,
Mhm.
or it was friable, but
Mm-hmm.
it was, I mean, there's a good chunk of it that went through, up in the Route 13 area, if you know where the Baptist church is through there. Just north of Whalen Park, where Whalen Park used to be.
Mhm.
They went right through there, just south of where Walmart is, just south of there. It's pretty ledgy in there, and it's pretty shaly, and they just dug it. And went through the-
no, you can finish.
I was gonna ask, was any of the land that they came to the Conservation Commission municipally owned conservation land, or was it, they came to you because of wetlands?
It was just wetlands, mainly wetlands. I mean, there was a lot of big landowners, big farm landowners that they're, you know, so they're lucky in that regard for Lunenburg, but I don't know that they went across any public land that I'm aware of. And
Except
of course,
for
they had
roads,
an
maybe?
existing easement too.
Oh, they had an existing easement, so they didn't have to
This
negotiate
is a
that.
6-inch line that they were increasing to a 12-inch.
Oh.
But they,
Well, that's another question that we've asked. There's another line already off of the Bolton line that goes towards Clinton. You know,
Mhm.
why can't they use that existing line, you know?
Yeah.
Well, in terms of impact on the wetland, of putting the line right through the wetland, I was thinking also about having to maintain it open for the 50-foot width, and doing that with herbicides, right in the wetland where they have, you know, that's where herbicides have the greatest impact.
Mhm.
yeah,
I think that 50 foot is just the initial when they're putting in the line now.
it is.
Oh,
Yeah, so
well,
what
I've
they
read that they're
maintain
talking about
afterwards
100
is-
feet initially,
Oh.
and that 50 feet is more like what the right-of-way or the
Yeah,
easement
it's a-
area is. But
So
that
how
what they
does-
maintain, I'm not sure that maybe,
There's a
I
question
may
there.
have that.
How
Did you see that in here? I may have, I think I did have that question.
You had a question about stockpiling materials, right? Is that where I
Did
saw it? Was it on yours? I can't remember. Is that too many questions?
Mm.
But I know that one's come up other places too, where they would stockpile materials as they go through the conservation, right? How?
What is this?
What is the width of the pipeline right away through Bolton? Can it be reduced in any sensitive areas such as wetlands or rich species habitat?
Where is this?
It's on page 4 in the middle.
Okay.
Above it was what is the size of the pipe that's being proposed by the Bolton Illustrated lateral line.
When you use the phrase pipeline right-of-way, that specifically means the width that they need to keep, like, vegetation down in? Is that what that means?
You know, it could be synonymous with something else, like maybe it's not the right term, I don't know. So do you want me to
I'd like to
clarify
like,
that?
Yeah, how wide of an area, how wide is the line of maintained vegetation or whatever?
How
they would-
wide is the cleared
Yeah, the clear.
vegetative area? Okay.
Maybe that's the same thing as pipeline right-of-way.
Well, I don't mind clarifying it so that we get the answer, and hopefully get an answer. So it's 7:30, I don't know if you
Okay.
want to,
Yeah, we should.
move to the first hearing.
Okay, so why don't we move on to Bloomfield, 697 Main Street, public hearing on notice of intent.
Hello.
Tom, coming?
I don't think he is. I talked to him last week, I wasn't sure, but it's,
We never did the roll call.
No, we didn't. You want to do that? Should we do that? Sure.
Janet Pasatoro.
James Tom?
Brian Garrity.
And Carol Gumbark, Conservation Administrator.
So would you like to introduce yourself?
sure, Greg Roy, Dush Armadillos, there's some new faces, so, good to meet you. I haven't been here in a while, I guess.
So I think well, I don't know if there were meetings on this case while I wasn't here for a few months, but I know that months ago, we conducted a site visit.
Yeah.
This is where there was some paving done that was not approved of, so they had to do a notice of intent after the fact, after the work had already been done. I don't know if you were here.
Doesn't sound familiar.
It was a while ago.
The Hills River Road, no,
Since your last meeting.
I haven't been updated.
Almost a year ago is when we
Oh,
initiated
is it?
the certificate of compliance,
Yeah.
probably when you did your site walk,
Yeah.
back June, July. So, there's an order of conditions outstanding on the property from 1996 that included work in the back of the site, that included creating a gravel parking area in the back of the site. And Tom contacted us last year and said, hey, I don't think I ever closed out that order of conditions. So we've been working with him since then to close that order of conditions out. So you're correct, we came before you to initiate the process, and you said, it's paved, file a notice of intent. So that's what we've done tonight. So several things have changed since 1996. The two main things that have changed are the presence or the existence now of the Massachusetts Endangered Species Act and the existence of the Mass Stormwater Regulations. So both of those things were now part of the current notice of intent that we filed. We just today, Carol, I think you were copied on the email?
Yes.
We just today
I didn't even
received.
print it out yet, so.
But it's in your inbox. We just received the letter of no take from Natural Heritage, so we've addressed that concern. The stormwater management was submitted to you and to DEP to document compliance with the 9 or 10, I guess, stormwater management standards. So I'll just give you an overview of what we've done to bring the site into compliance with current day standards. So we looked at this, at the time of the notice of intent, the pavement limit went down to about the end of the building. There was no building here. This was all parking area in here. So we looked at this in the drainage analysis as making sure that we accommodated all the portions of the site that now currently drain or now are currently paved or drain through the pavement area now. And most of the stormwater is routed to this catch basin, and one of the significant concerns is that there's an undersized 4-inch overflow. This is a leaching catch basin, and when it overflows or it rains really hard, it overflows out this 4-inch pipe and discharges down the rather steep slope right in this area here. So there's a couple of problems with that. One is it's undersized to handle the tributary area, and it does not comply with current Massachusetts stormwater management policy, which would require you to pre-treat prior to infiltrating rapidly permeable soil, which we have here. It's a very sandy, gravelly soil. So what we've done is we've created a underground infiltration area which mitigates the runoff and knocks the peak rate of runoff back down to pre-developed conditions. And we're proposing to turn this into a deep sunk hooded catch basin. So we're gonna go in there, we're gonna mud up the leaching, we're gonna prevent it from leaching, and we're going to run a new line that's properly sized over to the infiltration structure. And then create a new discharge on this side, which will help us because first of all, it's a little bit further away from the wetland, and second of all, it's in an area that's not anywhere near as steep. So we can mitigate some velocity erosion, scour concerns that we have that currently exist here.
Great, how close is it to the wetland?
The discharge point is, I think this is the 25 foot, so over here, where the edge of this riprap is probably 15 feet, here we're about 30. Between 20, greater than 25 and less than 30, it's probably like 20, it looks like 27, or something like that. So we've prepared, in addition to the filing standard Form 3, we've also prepared a rather lengthy stormwater report to document the compliance with the stormwater regulations, and are here to answer any questions that you folks might have.
What's the red triangle there?
This here, that's just I just highlighted the building. I was just
Okay.
trying to
And-
color up a plan, and honestly, I ran out of time to color the whole plan this evening, so.
Okay, another thing we saw when we did the site visit was a big trash
Storage?
bin with, a storage bin with hazardous
Well,
materials.
it's a trailer,
It's a
it's a
Okay.
bin, yeah.
Those are over in this area here, yep.
Okay, that was
Those are
gonna
shown
be,
in the plans.
one was gonna be, was the one with the hazardous material relocated? It was supposed to be moved further from the wetland? I know, I just wanted to finish,
That I'm not sure.
because that's one other thing that.
I don't know the answer to
We
that.
had asked for.
Okay.
Martha, did you have a question?
Why is the address 697 Main Street associated with this? Isn't Brownfield on Route 110?
Because I guess I goofed.
Oh, it is Still River.
Is it 697 Street of this?
Well, it says Main Street, it must
Oh.
be Still River.
But it's not 697 either.
I don't know.
164.
164 Still River. Thank you, I didn't notice that. Put it in my minutes, it's 697.
And you had another question?
Yes, I have another question. Does this associate with stormwater runoff at Broomfield Labs?
Yes, that's the
Okay.
application.
How long
yes.
has this been outstanding?
The order of conditions that is current is from 1996.
I was an associate member of the Zoning Board of Appeals. Brownfield came in front of us several times when I was an associate member. There was always a chronic problem there with water going into the Still River instead of staying on their own land. At one time, they tried to link in his mother's house next door into land to make up for whatever you needed for drain off here. This has been outstanding an awfully long time.
So did the ZBA have any requirements that they were supposed to meet to handle?
Well, I know
permit?
that they had, I'm sure they had a filing from this, but, I mean, there are chronic runoff problems here. So, let the
Right.
commission be
So,
aware.
one question then that she raises with this, and I don't know whether it's relevant to us or not, but the infiltration trench is being proposed on a lot that's not owned by, or it's not
Yeah,
his
he'll,
lot where the
right,
house is, so how
right.
does that work?
He'll be creating an easement around that.
I would recommend that you look through the Board of Appeals things from that year and go through that. I even have them in my attic. I mean, this is a chronic application person to the Board of Appeals. And I don't think just as lots of time has gone by that this should be covered over.
Well, it's
Well,
not.
it's certainly not being covered over. I mean,
So
we're
it's-
going through pretty significant expense now
What's
to bring this
happened in
into
the last-
compliance.
Well, what
It's
happened,
20 years.
what happened, Martha, and Janet already said it, but the commission, newer members in the commission, not from whatever year you're saying, 1980, 1996, were approached by the Bromfields to get a certificate of compliance for work that had been outstanding, that had been done a long time ago, that they'd never closed out. And it became known to us then that the drainage wasn't adequately sized and/or reviewed and approved by the Conservation Commission, and pavement had been put down in places that hadn't been approved. So this is a filing tonight to correct the drainage problems.
Which is long
Yes, long
overdue.
Yeah. But so I think we had some
Way
other
long
questions too.
overdue.
That when Janet and I reviewed the file a little bit on Monday morning, we had some questions. I can bring them up, or unless you want to, Janet. Well, one of the questions, and Greg, I'm not sure whether you will know this or not, but I think in the application you said that you determined that the riverfront area was,
Yeah.
that you found the channel in the Still River Channel, I guess, within the marsh to determine where the mean and high water line is.
Yeah.
And I know on, our small streams, through town headwater streams, more or less, we use the top of bank, but I wasn't sure what you used in this case to determine mean annual high water.
That was a good question.
Okay, I wasn't sure if
I
you'd
will
know
have
it.
to- Yeah, Brandon was the one that was out there in the kayak. So I'll have to ask him what
Okay.
he,
Because I don't, I'm not looking at the plans, I don't know how close, if
Yeah.
mean and high water line was determined to be 15 feet off the top of bank, or off the
Yeah.
channel, or whatever, if that would move it one way or another, but I think we should know how that
Okay.
was, about how it was
okay,
determined.
yep, I'll check with him on that.
Okay, and I have a really basic, stupid question. How do we,
No
as the
stupid
commission, know whether this proposal is sufficient? For example, for the Condine case, I got a consultant to sort of look at the engineer's plans, and then they gave their recommendations, and I never would have thought of the things that they pointed out if we hadn't had the consultant, you know what I mean?
Right.
So for this, I don't know anything about drainage systems and.
Right, and none of you actually have received the stormwater report, even at this point. We've got hard copies of the application, but I hadn't distributed that at this stage. I did mention it to Greg that in this last project that was parking lot related, that we did ask for a peer review consultant to look at what's been submitted, because a lot of it's based on the assumptions that the engineer's making, and they know better in some ways than the Conservation Commission's familiar with that kind of stuff when they read through the reports. So, and I know, for example, I guess, one of the questions that came out of the Condine report is that they're going to do an infiltration system in a new parking lot, and they didn't provide any test information to show that the soils are sandy now. So you may have other anecdotal information from them, but we would want to know really where the infiltration area is, that is sandy. I mean, I
Yeah.
think that whole area along Still River generally is.
We did do it.
You did do some tests,
Yeah,
okay.
we did do a test with them.
Okay, so, anyway, and then there were other things that, they look at the watershed that we just don't have the experience to do. So because we don't have an engineer, that works for the town, if you feel it's appropriate, then we would ask to have, we can ask to have a peer review consultant take a look at this, because I'm not an engineer by any means,
Okay.
even though I've looked at reports, I don't look at them every day. We don't get we don't get the drainage reports on
Well, not to
parking
mention it
areas
puts
that
you to sleep.
often.
I mean, you'd never get through it. Puts you, it
Well, I'm sure.
really.
Well, a lot of it's computer generated stuff that you're just,
Yeah,
but,
exactly, numbers.
so is that something you think that is worth having done? I mean, I think it was certainly worth it in the other project.
I think one of the problems that we had with the Condine site was that we didn't have a high level of confidence that they had treated each issue in depth. So we had somebody else do a peer review.
Well, right, and not that I don't trust you personally, but as Martha pointed out, this is a problem that has been chronic since 1996, and I guess I'm sort of tending to want to be as thorough as possible. I don't know. Martha, did you?
Could I have the correct address there for 730 Broomfield on the agenda, please?
164 Still River Road.
164, okay. And this young man, I think this happened when he was probably in grade school. I should know his name, I'm sorry.
Greg Roy.
Yeah, not
It's
quite
Gregory.
grade school, but I do appreciate that this has been quite a while.
Yeah, it's Ducharme Dillis, and your first name is
My name's Greg Roy.
Greg.
Yes.
Okay, thanks. I just want to correct
Yeah,
this.
no problem.
I'm actually going to look up my files from this
Yeah,
in the attic.
he must have received a variance, Martha, for the building? Is that why,
Uh,
before you, is that?
Well, it would be in the annual report of that year, that particular, Broomfield thing would, you could look that up in the annual report for
Sure.
1996
Yeah.
as to what the thing was, but I know there were all kinds of issues with the zoning board of appeal.
All kinds meaning.
Well, it was not an easy decision. It was not a straightforward decision. And I'm not sure whether they approved it or not, but that would be a matter of public record.
So I had a couple of other questions too. Did you
So,
jump?
I'm sorry, Greg, right?
Yes,
No,
ma'am.
I think the issue here is whether this stormwater plan is sufficient
Exactly.
to.
And I don't know how to judge that.
Right. And again, going back to the Condyne site, which was a similar question, we didn't feel in that case that the Condyne people had provided or done the appropriate testing to determine whether their plan would be successful or not. So I think that's one of the questions we have here, is whether we think that Ducharme and Dillis has done that sufficiently.
Well, I'm happy to go through the report for you, but it's rather lengthy.
That's a question more to the rest of the commission.
Right,
So,
I can understand that. I mean,
a couple of the things that are in the report that I had questions about are when you have the deep sump catch basin, what is the recommended maintenance for removing sediment from that?
what we're recommending, or what the,
Well, did
Well,
you
we're using
recommend
this-
anything, and if you
yeah.
didn't, what would be the
Uh-huh.
recommendation?
so, So, there's a lot that goes into this report. One of them is an operation and maintenance plan, which is right here. So, we are proposing operation and maintenance plan. Deep sump hooded catch, so our operation and maintenance plans are structured so that they can be put on record and that they can notify previous or subsequent owners of what the system is, how to operate it, and how to maintain it. So, we sort of list what we're providing. There's gonna be a deep sump hooded catch basin that flows to an underground stormwater management system, area. And then we have, deep sump catch basin's not on there.
Okay, well, there's the reason for the question, probably.
So, great question.
And so
Uh,
with the,
But we do have storm drain lines, inspection, so it would probably fall in that, inspection, spring, and cleaned as required.
but really I'm looking for the method of cleaning, and the reason
Oh,
I ask it
yeah.
is because, so if you have a hooded catch
Yeah.
basin, is that hooded meaning it has a gas trap?
Yes.
Okay, so my understanding, and Harold can always chip in if he really wants, since he's come to our meeting, is that when you use a clamshell, oftentimes the gas traps get broken. And so I thought that the recommended maintenance of a catch basin with gas trap and deep sump was to vacuum.
Back it, yeah.
Yes? That would be the
Um,
recommended?
Well, you can, vacuuming is more efficient, I would say, yes. I mean, can it be done with a deep sump, with a clam? Yeah, but vacuuming, I think, is more efficient.
Yeah,
Those are
I mean, I've just
possible.
heard that that's the case, is that they usually break the
Yeah.
gas traps, and then that's not gonna function.
Right, well, then you have to vacuum.
And if you're doing it annually or semi-annually, then that's a
Yeah.
lot of extra maintenance that way. I mean,
Yeah.
okay, so that was one question. Also, I'm not sure, did your O&M have anything about the infiltration chambers for maintenance?
Yeah,
And
so
because I don't really know I'm not sure that, I didn't look at the detail sheets, I suppose,
Yeah.
that carefully yet on that.
we defer right to the storm tech we include the storm tech information, which has manufacturer's recommended maintenance right in it.
And generally, what is that?
Well, let me just explain to you, I guess, first how this operates. So, this is a fairly complicated, a fairly simple system that's made a little bit more complicated by the presence of an isolator row. One of these rows is wrapped with filter fabric, and all of the low flow is forced into that chamber first until it overflows over weir, and then, for high events, and it flows into the rest of the chamber. And the reason for that is so that you can go into this manhole and you can clean out that isolator row. So, that's the main
You called it what, an isolator row?
isolator row, yes, yeah. And they have these, this is why I put it in the report, because they have these fittings here that they put on there, and they jet the lines, and you can stick that in, and the jets, they shoot the water backwards at you, and then you can suck it out of the manhole, kind of thing.
Does that to remove oils and?
Yeah, mainly
Oil
sediment
cells.
and things. The oils would get trapped in the pre-treatment even before that, and then this would be more if there's any sediment that might carry through. We really have a double treatment train here because we have to comply with the, forgive me if I'm getting boring, but in a rapidly permeable soil, which we are in here, we have to have 44% total suspended solids removal prior to infiltration. And you get that by a 25% removal device here and a 25% removal device there, which if you do the math on that, it ends up 25% of 75% is, ends up with a total of 44%.
So this is your TSS requirement?
Yes.
To meet the,
Part
so
of
the
the
total,
TSS
so part of the
requirement.
TSS total suspended solid requirement in the stormwater manual is that they have this pre-treatment and this extra
Right.
work.
So the maintenance would be, the operation and maintenance task would be inspection, and then as needed, if you see sediment built up in there, that you'd go in there and you'd jet it up.
Was the inspection annual? I don't know. Do you- It's in the manufacturer's specs.
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay.
Carol, I can provide that for you.
Well, it just, in the O&M, it should be more specific. I don't know what's in the O&M, but I think in O&M, if we're gonna record the O&M, and that's what somebody's gonna look at, and they're not gonna go back to the manufacturer's recommendation, or they may not be able to find it might be in the attic, or wherever, right? That they would, it'd be better to have it spelled out.
Yep, we can do that.
Martha, you had another question?
Yeah, I just had two quick questions. In the last 18 years, has the number of parking spots on that area or impermeable surface increased
Through
at
you.
Brookfield?
So the area has not increased in terms of what was permitted, but, well, your question, I think, was a two-part question. The first one was, are there more vehicles there? I would say no, because the area has been the same from the current open order of conditions. It has been paved where the proposal, the old proposal, which I mentioned at the beginning, only included gravel. Brookfield Laboratories did pave it when they,
What was the
outside of the-
percentage of impermeable, the increase?
I don't have that number off the top of my head. But it's basically the balance of the back here. This was all gravel, and it was paved.
That would be a good number just for our file order too.
I can get that
I
for you.
think that was gravel for a reason.
Well, it may have been, the commission at the time may have wanted it to be, and we did have some letters, I can't remember them right now from a year ago, but it may have been that they wanted it to be more porous.
It was,
Yeah, you think it
I
was?
walked with Rose.
Yeah, you remember that requirement. Did you also in your O&M have where they were going to locate snow when they plow and how that was going to be?
No, I didn't address that.
Okay, we'd like that on a parking lot as well.
Yep.
And it shouldn't really be into the
Do
wetland.
they use salt at that facility?
He does not use salt.
They use a lot of sand. And I thought he said he used some salt when he, like up around the walk areas or something, but I can't remember.
He may have, he specifically told me he doesn't use, I don't think he uses sand or salt back there.
And when he came to us, we did talk about it, and I thought he may have done something about where people were walking, like out
I would believe
around
it's
the dock.
Like near the front, oh, yeah, around the dock, that was right, yeah, that just sometimes they have to use it around the dock when it freezes over. It's like this little.
Yeah, this is a little back right there, yeah. I can believe that. He said that the parking lot, he doesn't treat.
Now, how much disturbance is that when you actually install it,
This year?
the whole unit?
Well, what it'll entail, we're proposing to saw cut the pavement to get this, to get that line in. This we're gonna leave in place and just grout. So we'll just we won't disturb this, we'll just
Cap it
leave
off,
it,
yeah.
yeah. And this, we're not proposing any disturbance, so we'll just get inside there, we'll route up the current orifices in that structure so there won't leach anymore. And then over here, it's just, this is all lawn area, so we would, we'd just excavate that down to design elevations.
My recollection was that there was not, and I could be wrong, but that there was not any curbing. And that really
don't
it may have
believe
just been
there
built,
was. Well-
like we have built up sand and material
Yeah.
around the edge of the
I think
parking lot.
that's.
So would it be more appropriate to have berm
Like a berm, like a bit berm or something there,
to,
keep it on site.
yeah? I mean, I don't, again, with making sure that the drainage gets to the catch basin.
Supposed to have a berm around it to keep
Yeah.
it on site.
Okay, we can check that.
If that was true,
It was
was
supposed to be all
it?
crushed out. It was never around, it was just letting it go.
But I think you might be right, I think they might have had a, it's funny, it doesn't show on this plan, but I almost thought they had some concrete.
If they did, it was
Along there.
broken up and had been hit by
Yeah.
plows, is my
Which-
guess or something, but I can't remember.
If they have to have
I remember
one-
thinking of something about the
Yeah.
berm, that there was something when we
Alright.
talked with him before. So Jim hasn't been there, Brian, you haven't been there?
No, I was there.
You were there,
Yeah.
so do
I have not been
so you
there.
would probably like to do a site visit there. I have a recollection of looking at the wetland flags with him, or you, or Brandon, or somebody,
Probably
before it
Brandon.
was too thick, and it was fairly much at the toe of the slope. God, I didn't even remember when it was, but it must have been maybe last fall or some time ago.
Probably, yeah,
Um,
we embarked on this last fall, so.
Yeah, but
probably.
so I don't know if anybody else wants to see the wetland or see the site. But it
Sure.
sounds like we should probably move along because we've got
Yeah.
other hearings, we're 15 minutes behind on those. But if we're gonna continue it for peer review consultant anyway, we should talk about when we think it'd be reasonable to have this back. Like, and you could do a site visit in the meantime.
While we're waiting for the peer review, so.
Yeah. I mean, or Jim can do it, or I can go with him. I'm not saying, unless you wanted Greg to be there, or if you wanted it staked out, like Laura was asking how much area is being altered, do you want that staked out, or do you want to do a visit and see whether there's concrete or?
Well, it would be nice to actually see where that is.
Yeah, I didn't look at that, so.
Stockpiling.
Mhm.
Have you guys seen it since it's been paved?
Yes.
Yeah, we went out there, it was
We went
pretty.
a year or so to 96.
So it's paved, yeah, it's been paved for a
To be
long,
paved?
yeah.
It was.
It's been paved for a long time,
Yeah.
it hasn't, the pavement isn't recent. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's after 1996, let's be clear about
Yeah.
that, but it's not, it's at least a decade old, I would imagine.
I'm gonna be unavailable for 2 weeks.
Okay. So when we did the peer review the last time, the way we did it was that we,
Who does your peer review?
well, we didn't have anybody, this was the
Oh.
first time, so we went out, I got 3 quotes from, one was Horsley and Witten, one was, VBH or something like, right? But they're a big firm, and then there was another one. And one couldn't do it because they had a conflict with a client, and then I think one with me, I don't know, I think there were 2, right? It turned out there were 2 that we ended up looking at, and they were very comparable. And it was around the price that the proponent expected it to be. In that case, it was $3,000, and that was to do a peer review, site visit, and response to.
So
any
$3,000 would approximate the design cost for this, so that, we would say that's probably a little steep.
Okay, so again, I don't know what
Yeah.
the cost would be. But what we did is, so we got the quotes, so we presented the information, so I got everything electronically, presented the information to a couple of firms, and then the commission actually discussed which firm that they wanted to go with and at a meeting. So we can do that, but we don't have to, when it's under $3,000, we could appoint, a couple of people, myself and somebody else, to review them if you wanted to do that, and to move it along, I guess is sort of what I'm saying. Our next meeting's July 15th, then our following meeting's August 19th. I mean, my feeling is that, I know Greg's going on vacation, I know Jim's
Yeah,
going on
that's
vacation. we would need to get all this electronically from you.
Yep.
In order for me to send it out.
That's no problem.
Okay, so do you think you'd actually be able to, I don't know that we would have, I don't know whether we'd have time to get it out and have a review and get the information back by the 15th of July. I'm not positive whether you think that's reasonable or not, or whether you'd want to put it to the 19th. I mean, it's not like it's not already paved, but maybe he has a time frame he wants to get the work done, you know, which, you know, I'm not trying to prolong it, I'm just saying what's a reasonable time for you to get everything done.
Well, I guess it's up to the client.
Well, yeah, I mean, we can get you, I can get you the electronic information tomorrow, so.
Okay.
When you know.
Okay, well then, we can try to go for the 15th.
Yeah.
If we don't have it done by then we'll just have to go to the next meeting.
Okay.
And then you'll be back in time to do a site visit before then if you want.
Yeah, I'll be back the 6th.
So, continue to, so what did we just continue that other one to? 7:45, so it'd have to be July 15th at 8? The other one was 7:45, right?
Yeah.
So, you'd like to do that then, Greg? Continue to July?
Yeah, I'd rather not go to August, because then I just feel like, you know.
Oh, we only have one meeting each month.
Well, yeah, no, I can understand summer schedules, but that's
Well,
what I'd
and we
rather.
don't have any members on the commission. Find some members.
Yeah, is that too, huh, I guess.
Yeah.
But, so, you know, if we can do what we can to get it done on the 15th, and if we're, you know, at least if we're close, then we'll be sure to hit the August one. Whereas if we just go to August, I'd hate to-
Procrastinate.
Oh, no, it's procrastinate.
No, I didn't use the procrastination word, you did.
Okay, so, Carol,
just
I
happened.
would just say that we're continuing the meeting on July 15th at,
To 8 p.m.? Yep.
So just a request on behalf of the applicant that, you know, that we be involved in whatever you select.
Well, it's up to the commission to decide who is selected. That's the law.
Yeah, my client's paying for it.
I know, but it's up to the commission to decide who to choose.
Yeah, but I just want to have visibility on the quotes.
Yeah, we will send you the copies of the quotes.
That's what I'm
Oh, yeah.
No, I'm not asking to select it.
Okay.
I'm just saying that I want to have a.
Yeah, and I mean, as I said, the last time it came in, it was exactly what the person had thought it was going to be.
Give them a week.
We might use Fred, but we don't usually use Fred. I mean, most of the time, this kind of stuff goes before the planning board before it comes to us, and so they have done it, you know? And so this other case came before us, it hasn't been, it just was filed with the planning board, and so we did the review and, and at the time, I honestly didn't think Fred was taking on that kind of thing, because he had been teaching, I just didn't know that his schedule would permit it one way or another.
Yeah,
So,
Well,
anyway,
it's-
July.
no difference.
okay.
Well, I just need him to sign this. And then you got the other stuff we asked about as well, O&M stuff and
Yeah, I got a 9.
ANRAD and all
Yeah.
that stuff.
Yeah,
And not ANRAD, the,
Hazardous
meaning
waste.
high water, the hazardous waste.
yeah, I think I got everything. Okay. All right,
Okay, so let's
so
continue.
we'll see you in a month.
July
You will.
15th.
Thank you very much for your time, appreciate it.
Have a good vacation.
Greg, if you send it, it's fine to send it tomorrow, I won't be in the office tomorrow.
Okay.
Okay.
I gotta write that down, so the other thing I didn't get to is your Sanford Road thing.
Oh, yeah, you didn't bring that tonight?
No.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so next up is Fulton DPW.
Carol, if I can inject something, a
Yeah.
gravel parking lot that everybody says is permeable is not. Once it's compacted and used, it becomes non-permeable.
Yeah. I think most everybody probably figures that, but yes, it's true. I mean, unless they do something more routinely to change that.
The gravel we have, it's impermeable.
Yeah.
Completely.
What?
Harold's next. So, Bolton Conservation Commission will hold a public meeting under the provisions of Mass General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, Wetlands Protection Act and Riverfront Act, and under the Bolton Wetlands Bylaws, Section 1.18, to consider a request for determination of applicability filed by Town of Bolton Department of Public Works for asphalt recycling and asphalt rubber surface treatment with stone chip overlay at Fox Run Road, map 6B.
What we intend to do is the same as we did on 117. We'll
Yep.
be doing a hot place recycling, and about 3 to 4 weeks after that, depending on when the state releases the money, we're going to be using what we used on Annie Moore, or similar to Annie Moore, and on Whitcomb is a stone chip. This one here is a single stone chip with 20% rubber. It's an overlay.
And is that different than anymore?
No, Annie Moore was a triple. This is going to be a single. That part that has not been the hot top, that on either one of them had a stone chip, and we use stone chip on them. The only reason I went to the hot top is to gain something, so eventually we could use a hot place recycling in years to come.
So that one you had to change because it didn't have that?
Yeah, we
Okay.
do is it deteriorates. The stone chip lasted well over 15 years, so I'm no complaint.
Did I see something in the paper that DPW is going to be doing South Bolton Road
Yes.
also?
Yes.
Is that part of this?
No, that's going to be another one. It's going to be the same process, exactly, and don't think you have any wetlands on Warner, but we're going to do Warner from Harvard Road to the Harvard line. But when we go through South Bolton, we'll be doing the same process, and it not only saves us money, but it gives us your wear service, and I think it gives you what looks like an old-time road.
And so what about the relationship to the wetlands? So in Fox Run, there's a stream crossing area.
We won't not be going beyond the berm. We stay right within the berm.
And is
Yeah,
there
we
any
may-
tree removal or anything like that?
Nothing. Zero.
So this is the little wetland we're talking about?
Yeah.
Well, and then it flows out.
It flows out, there's a crossing right here.
Oh.
There's some different, it's deep.
Yeah, so you have two things. You have that wetland for the stream that goes under and then the...
No,
the,
I don't
I
see-
just, that's not really a circular wetland. I was just showing them that there was wetland in that vicinity. That was a map I did for them. What was I gonna say? So are you not taking out sand and salt along the edges like you've done on Main Street?
That's already done.
On this one?
That has berm, yes.
Oh, this has berm, so you
Yes.
don't have that issue, okay.
We will not be disturbing the structures. We will not, and even when they put the emulsion down, the rubber down, and put the stone on, they put plates over the catch basin so nothing goes in.
It's the same process used on 117, right? It's just a change
It
in
was
the-
the recycling is,
Yeah,
on 117, I put 1 inch of hot top on,
okay.
and the only reason I did that is because of the volume of traffic.
Yeah, it's not.
Now, where we have lower volume, we could use a different and a less expensive process. And the one thing with this 20% rubber is, let's say you get a crack in the wintertime, come summertime, it'll heal itself. The rubber moves back in again, and the rubber is made from recycling tires. So they are using them for something.
Anybody have any other concerns, questions?
No kind of litter or anything on the side, yeah.
Anyway,
Any excess,
be swept up.
everything cleaned up?
Yeah, the Allstate is the only company that does this, and they send a broom out, they can pick it right up right away.
So this is a request for determination, and they're just asking if you to determine whether the work is subject to the Wetlands Act and to the wetland bylaw. Now, our bylaw actually has exception for maintenance of the roads, that they're not expanding them, so that wouldn't apply. It would just be the Wetlands Protection Act. And I think in the past, you've made the finding that -2, that the work is within the resource area, but it's not going to dredge or fill or alter
I have
that.
one question. What is the 2 and -2? Just where does that?
It's just
what
how
is
it
that?
falls. There's 1,
Can I
there's
see
2, and
where
there's
they-
3.
Oh, I see. Okay, so does everybody agree with making that negative determination? within an area
So
such.
you're making a motion?
Yeah, so I make a motion that we make a negative determination that the work described in the request is within an area subject to protection under the Act, but will not remove, fill, dredge, or alter that area. Therefore, it does not require a filing of a notice of intent.
Second?
All in favor?
Thank you very much.
So I'll put this in your box, but not till Thursday. So I'm not here tomorrow.
Okay,
When do you think it's starting?
starting Friday. Starting Friday, and we should be done Monday with the hot and recycling. And then
Okay,
we'll
I'll
let
make
us
sure you
know.
get it in your box on Thursday.
All right.
I'm not here on Friday either.
Either am I.
Oh,
I think
who do
Thursday.
you have overseeing it?
Like 50
Nate will be there.
Okay.
before that.
You got it.
Okay, the next one you need to review the time to.
What is the next one? Nope, you can bring them up.
All right, next up is Wachusett Realty. Is that them? Bolton Conservation Commission will hold a public meeting under the provisions of Mass General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, Wetlands Protection Act and Riverfront Act, and under Bolton Wetlands Bylaw, Section 1.118, to consider a request for determination of applicability filed by Wachusett Realty Trust LLC for the grading of a proposed sewage disposal system at 562 Main Street, map 4C, parcel 25. And here we are.
Good evening. My name is Rob Oliver. I'm an engineer with David Ross Associates. With me tonight is Mike Tenalia from Clinton Savings Bank, who's
Well, can you spell that before you go too far?
Tenagia.
Okay, thank
Cross, I think we can figure out.
The site is 562 Main Street. There's an existing single-family home on the site now. Just for reference, it's next to the vet's office, and the field parking in Dirt Drive is next to us on the other side. Off the back of the site, actually on the town's property, there's a perennial stream that I believe flows under 495. There's a bordering vegetated wetland that we flagged out in the woods behind our site. So what we've done here is the bank is proposing to move their branch office from across the street to this site with a new building, parking, septic system, reusing the existing well. So
Is this where I wait for the bus to come?
on Main Street?
Yeah.
That's right,
The bus,
that's a good
the bus from Indiana drops kids off at 3 o'clock in the
Oh, it
afternoon.
might be. So what we have here is the existing, the proposed work. What I've shown here is use the stream in blue, green line represents our wetland line, 25-foot wetland resource area under the town bylaw, and then the 100-foot buffer zone in purple, and then as well the 200-foot riverfront area extending off of the stream. The only work we have within either the buffer or the riverfront is basically this corner of our fill slope on the septic system. As much as we could, we kept everything out of the resource areas, the buffer and the riverfront. Originally, our plan was to have the septic up in the front of the site, but because of septic mounding and groundwater offsets, it just didn't work because the whole site would have come up with it. So we ended up with some grading for our system into the buffer and just slightly into the riverfront. Combined, the two overlapping areas is roughly 300 square feet of area. It's all existing lawn now. In back of the house, the house is basically where the building is going, and the garage he has is back in here. So everything that's paved outside of the resource area will be drained on site with treatment and underground infiltration. It's all sandy gravel out there. It's a beautiful material. It's perfect for infiltration, so we don't get that too often. So that works out good for us. Leaving the spot for the septic system to meet all of our setbacks from the neighbor's well, our well, the wetlands, the on-site drainage. That was the spot left for our septic system. So we've come in, we filed a request for determination. We'd be asking that you can come to a negative determination with conditions if you so choose for this work. As I said, it's lawn now. Of course, we're adding some fill for the system in that corner. It'll be either mowed or let go on the back slope of the septic system as natural. My inclination now is that the bank will probably continue to mow it unless there's a preference otherwise. Just for reference to, I didn't point it out, but this green line is the existing tree line. So the only tree removal is there's an existing ash that falls in the system. That's the only tree that's coming down for this. And it's actually outside both areas. It's outside the buffer and riverfront, albeit right next to it. So that's the proposal. That's why we're in tonight. So I can certainly answer any questions you may have.
Are you keeping the original building?
No, the house is gone.
The house is gone.
Yep.
How many square feet are you?
The total,
intruding into?
the total overlapping is 300 square feet. In the request I listed separately, we're altering 265 square feet of buffer and 165 square feet of riverfront. The total combined where it overlaps is 300 square feet. So it's minimal work, it's lawn, it'll be lawn when we're done. We're coming in because we know we have to.
Oh, so it's on now?
It is, yeah, the existing tree line is outlined here in green, so there's no real clearing involved. There's one tree that has to come out for the system.
So, okay.
No, well, I was just, I didn't catch where your drainage was going, because obviously you're going to have a lot more.
Right, we have this, I've highlighted the pavement. Basically, this is a driveway that comes in, there's a little bit of parking in the back. There'll be drive-through lines here, and an exit drive. Everything's getting pitched back into the site. We have a catch basin back here, a catch basin over here. I think those are the only two. It's a small site, it's 0.85 acres in total, so the scale of the development isn't really all that great. But everything's gonna stay on site. Everything basically from the middle of the septic will go back. The existing high point on the property, there's a 90 contour, is right here. So existing wise, this all goes here. The parking will come back here and we're treating it and infiltrating it. So we're actually gonna be getting more infiltration out of this site than they currently get with the amount of pavement we have, the building and the pavement.
Is there an existing septic on the site?
Yeah, there's an existing cesspool right here. Yeah, the house is right here.
Yep.
The cesspool is right off the back corner of the house. So that's gonna get filled in, taken out. So of course, you're getting a better treatment on your septic as well here out of this project. So all in all, septic-wise, it's an improvement over existing. And then all the lawn area back here, for the most part, is gonna remain lawn.
So, I was gonna say, on that, we usually try to avoid having maintenance in the resource area, because oftentimes, especially when it's not a homeowner, you know, the lawn clippings go into the wetland where nobody can see them, and, you know, sometimes it goes beyond the area of what, you know, might be needed. And we've oftentimes used like rocks or fencing or something to kind of try to leave that area from being mowed. So my first question was really going to be, did you look at any alternatives, you know, to not have to grade into that area?
It would require building a wall for the septic. So, I mean, there would be an alternative. We don't want to have to build a wall. I mean, it really doesn't need one other than the resort, the buffer in the riverfront. To answer your question about maintenance back there, Mike and I had this discussion earlier today. I mean, we'd be willing to let it go natural. I mean, it's really the commission's preference. For the most part, you know, any landscaping that's done will be across the site. The septic system itself will want to be mowed to maintain it, but the back slopes, they could go wild if there's, you know, if there's something, some kind of barrier, whether it's boulders, although I don't think we have a lot of boulders on the site, we'd have to bring them out.
But there's something, sometimes they have a lot of boulders on the site, so we've used that
Yeah,
in some cases.
I mean, I certainly, as long as they don't interfere with maintaining and keeping the septic mode, I don't think there's any.
If it was allowed to go natural, would you have any concern that they would need to mow it at all, so that whatever ended up growing as far as trees, that the roots wouldn't get into the system, or?
I guess I would want to have them have the ability to go in there and give it a yearly mowing, but I think for just to knock it down and keep it from growing too natural. So I would want to maintain the ability to do that. But I think, of course, they have a landscaping company that takes care of all their properties. As far as dumping clippings and stuff, it's not a residential use. I think the landscaper would probably be taking everything off-site. And if that's needed to be a condition to make sure the landscaping company doesn't dump on the site, I don't think that's a problem either, because I'm pretty certain they probably take it all away.
Well, the backs of the slopes are usually steep enough that people don't really want to mow them.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's not going to be visible to
Well, that's just the
anybody
thing.
looking out the back.
For the bank, it doesn't really, it won't make a huge difference so long as they can at least maintain it yearly or however it needs to get knocked down. But I don't think there's going to be any real landscaping back here in terms of, keeping a lush green lawn, because it is out of sight. It's down off the back of the site behind the system.
You doing any landscaping in front of the system?
Yeah, right in the back of behind the parking lot,
Behind the
yes, right, yes we are.
Did you have to go to site plan review yet?
We're
or-
going through all of that. We have ZBA, we have.
But you haven't filed, you haven't gone yet?
We haven't gone yet.
Okay.
And the reason the whole thing couldn't be moved up a little bit to be totally out of the resource area is?
We're working with all the setbacks. We have an existing well here, a well here. I have to, under DEP stormwater management, be at least 50 feet from my underground infiltration. So the need to put the system back here has really risen out of, it can't go into the parking just because it drives, we'd have to bring in 4 or 5 feet of fill to do all of this. So that's obviously doesn't work. And then moving it back here, it's making sure we meet all our setbacks. The system itself is 120 feet away from the wetlands to the trench. Board of Health requires 150 for 2-minute soils. We've already met with them, and they basically said so long as you're no closer than 100, they didn't see a big problem with us putting it in this location. So, the system itself, it's just some fill and goes back to a natural state, whether it's lawn or just naturally
Are
growing.
there any invasive plants growing in that area?
I've been back there. The woods themselves back here are fairly open. I'm no invasive species expert by any means, but possibly, but chances are they're on town property. Because,
Well, I guess just if we're letting it go, sometimes then you don't want to have it,
yeah,
you know.
and maybe a yearly mowing will help keep that down. If it presents itself as a problem.
We would do an annual cleanup when it's spring, cleanup, we would certainly take stuff out of there and clean it up and maintain it, it's not a problem.
Martha, you had a question?
Yes, Madam Chairman, now that the septic is no longer going to be in the front part of the lot, what's the grade going to be compared to existing now to the new building? Before, it's going to have to be raised because you were planning on putting the septic in the front. You won't have to raise that 2 feet anymore, correct?
Well, previously, when we were planning on having the septic out in the front, it would require 4 or 5 feet of fill for the entire site to make it work, because everything would have to come up correspondingly with the septic system.
So it's going to be really high.
It was going to be really high.
So now what's it going to be, do you anticipate?
Now it's about 2.5 feet of fill through the building, not out in the front yard. And we have to maintain some of that as well, because the underground stormwater that we're planning requires a 2-foot offset to groundwater.
So it'll be a minimum rise.
Yeah, it's
It won't
gonna,
be propped up really high.
no.
Are you going to extend the well?
We're gonna reuse the existing well. The cap's gonna be brought up to grade to meet code.
Thank you.
My only other question is, does anybody think they need to see it? We haven't reviewed the wetland delineation or?
We need to confirm that it's accurate.
Yeah, you should, I think they're requesting whether, well, let me see.
Don't look at that.
We're the first board that you've seen.
I'm sorry.
We're the first board that you've.
We have filed with the ZBA, but we haven't been in front of them. And I think design review board will be coming up, and then after that, I believe planning board will be our final review.
July 28th is the ZBA.
Okay, so we plenty of time between now and our next
Mhm.
meeting. So, yeah.
You want to set that up now?
Sure. Would you guys like to do your site visits these days?
I only can do them after work.
I'm good after work.
Thursday is my wetlands delineation training,
Okay.
so I'd like to do it after that.
Do it on Friday. Well, maybe not Friday.
Just not before that.
Good. Well, I cannot do evenings, that gets too complicated for me, so I could go at a different time, I guess.
It's on flag.
Yep, it's out in the woods behind the site. You should see it. I mean, we did it last year, fall, I forget exactly when we did it. The project didn't move as quickly as we initially thought it was going to, but it's certainly, they should be there, yeah. Unless I'm kidding.
Well, usually whoever did the flagging comes with us if we're looking at the wetland line. But
Yeah.
did you do that?
Steve Sears from my office did it.
I guess I'd also like to see, for the closest point, you know,
Okay, yeah, we can mark that off.
a couple marks, just so we
Sure.
have an idea where it is. Do you want to do next Tuesday night, that way, Carol? Does that work for anybody, or if you want?
No, I can't do the evenings, but.
I'll be packing, but I'll be here. I can do it.
It's not a good night for me, really.
Saturday or Sunday morning? You guys
I
can't do
can't do
it? Weekday morning? Well, I can't do the evenings. Maybe we don't all have to.
Well,
go.
That's what I was gonna-
We have one coming up on the 22nd. Do we have the site visit already?
Yes,
scheduled?
on Sunday you do,
Oh.
with, on Von Hill Road.
Can we
What
tack
time
this
is it?
on
Yeah,
afterwards
what
or
time is-
I
some?
don't remember. I was going to send you an email to remind you later in the week, but I don't remember offhand.
I think that
That's
was
great.
9.
I think I did 9 because I didn't, and I have to,
Yeah, it was 9
Yeah.
o'clock, June 22nd.
yeah, I have to confirm it back with the owners actually, because they said that that would be fine, but I didn't want to let them.
I can do it at either, before that or after that.
Because I can look at this anytime.
I can as
If that's
well.
fine with you, that
You can
would
do
go
it,
on
sure.
the plaque.
That's fine, I don't think Mr. Bracy would mind the commission coming through.
I will,
In fact, if you drive out and park for the fields, you've got an easier shot in at that point, actually. You can do that too.
if
You want to do 8:30?
Sure.
You think that's enough time?
I think so. Let's, yeah.
Okay.
8:30 and then
And then that at Von Hill and
Von
not.
Hill is probably going to be
Yeah.
the longer one, I think.
Yeah, well, Von Hill will take a little bit longer, but
No,
you're saying no, it's not enough time?
I don't think it's enough time to take a look at it and then get to Von Hill.
Yeah.
8:15?
Okay,
8:20?
okay, 8:15.
All right.
So, and do you want them to have their wetland person there to go over how they did the delineation?
Sure.
I mean, that's how we've usually done them.
Okay.
Okay.
If he can't be there, I will be, and I can give a synopsis of the flagging. I mean, we have a couple, we have one upland probe there, so we'll check, but someone will be there. That's this Sunday?
Yeah, July 22nd?
June 22nd.
June,
Yeah.
oh God, we're not
Yeah.
July.
This is, today's Parker Hill Day.
Oh, I didn't
Very
realize
good,
that.
man.
So if that's confirmed, I'll let Mr. Bracy know. I'll tell him 8 o'clock, just so he's prepared.
Yeah, 8:15.
Okay.
Yep. Okay, so he lives there now?
He does.
Okay.
Anxious to move out.
Okay, and then you want to continue this meeting then to
July 15th?
July 15th, and what did we just do, 8 o'clock? So, sorry, what's that one? That one's Rossfield, I think 15 minutes.
Can you really do that in 15 minutes?
I don't know.
Maybe 8:30? Maybe 8:30?
Well, we can continue to 8:15, I mean, and then if we're done, we're ready to go. I mean, we're back, unfortunately, we backlog, but sometimes it's easier to have,
Okay.
if we're ready to go, rather than wait for the continued time frame.
Okay.
What's our time? 8:15?
8:15. Well, so the site is at 8:15, but then also 8:15 PM on July 15th to continue the meeting.
And sometimes the commission can give a sense when they're doing the site visit whether they think anybody needs to attend, like if there's going to be a lot more questions that have come up from the site visit, or if it seemed as straightforward as you think it sounds like it is.
All right, that's fine.
So I don't know if we need to sign it. We can continue to form.
Site visit is 8:15.
Yes. Did I say clear? No.
I just wanted to make sure.
Okay. I prefer to see the wetland delineation at 8:15 PM.
Yeah, I'll just fill it out.
Even harder at Von Hills at 9.
Right. Even though that's about as long as a day gets,
Yeah.
it's probably not getting much longer than now.
8:30, yeah.
Next week is.
Yeah, the solstice is like the 20th, 21st, something like that, this weekend.
The changes have dropped off, so it's not changing the whole thing of the day now.
Put my name under that?
All right, well, thank you very much. Thank you. And someone will be there, and we will have the closest point marked for you.
That'd be great.
Thank you.
Great, thanks.
Thank you for your time. Have a good night.
So we had a continued hearing for PCT. So you don't have to read that.
All right, next up is Bolton Conservation Trust. So we went for our site visit, and anybody like to summarize the site visit? Nor do I.
I can summarize.
Well, I think most of the discussion had to do with what they were going to do with the stream while they were preparing the rest of the site. I think we spent as much time on that as anything else.
Right.
Would have to be dammed up and relocated because they have to remove the building from on top of the stream, even though it's covered, just to make sure stuff didn't get in there.
Yeah, so I think, I mean, we basically walked around, we took a look at all the buildings, septic systems. We had a chance to look at the stream, the existing stream channel and kind of where it went in the building here. We had a chance to look at where daylight over here. And some of the discussion, I remember, as we specifically looked at, you know, as we had in here before, we're going to be damming this up, and we have a pumping station here. And we were proposing to basically outlet or daylight that dewatering right here. And we looked at the quality of this wetland, whatever it is, rust, whether it was natural or not natural. We thought it would be a better idea in the field to kind of relocate that further down this wetland finger here. So these plans have been revised to address that. We've slid that down. Still using the same sediment trap with the erosion blanket going down to the wetland. The other thing we looked at was there was some invasive species over in this area here, Japanese knotweed, and we've revised the plans to kind of just call it a note that basically, given the earthwork that's going to happen there, you know, instead of doing like a cutting spot and dab, I actually think probably the better thing to do would be just to have it removed, it would be grubbed and disposed of properly, and then when they bring in loam, they'll basically reseed this area. Another question that was raised is kind of what would be reseeding that with, and what, you know, what the maintenance of that's going to be. And basically, I've added some notes to the plan under the redevelopment section, where we're looking to basically loam it and seed it with some sort of native meadow fescue variety that will be mowed a minimum of 2 times per year. And I just put a note in there that, you know, it would be mowed more frequently than that if necessary to mitigate against those invasive species that are coming up. So basically, the intent here is to not be having a manicured lawn. You know, we're not looking at having a lawn.
Yeah, we just want people to see what's there. So,
But at the same token, we want to just be able to maintain it enough so that it doesn't become overtaken by, you know, non-native, undesirable species.
No, don't say that.
And the other thing,
Next to all that wetland.
there was some trees behind this house, right behind 715 here, that we said, you know, we wanted to save. And I think certainly something that when they do demo the building shouldn't be an issue. And I just added a note in a couple different places on a couple different sheets. Basically, all trees, unless otherwise noted, are to remain, not be removed.
And at present, you're not yet removing the pavement that goes over here, or you are?
Well, we put in that it will. What it is in the phasing, when we called for a construction entrance, basically said, until it is removed, there obviously no construction entrance because it's pavement. But once it is removed, then, they'll have that riprap reinforcement. for the construction.
But in this phase, it's not being, is that right?
Until the pavement's gone.
This phase will remove the pavement.
This phase will remove.
Yes. Yeah.
Has the historical commission decided on disposition of the buildings?
Well, it's just one building.
It's not just our decision.
What we're doing is working with a number of people to look at various dispositions of that building. Whether it can be rehabbed, under what circumstances, what the lot would look like, what the septic would look like, whether it can be moved down Main Street to a more appropriate lot that does in fact have septic, whether it needs to be, and this would be a discussion with the Board of Health, whether we want to put a tight tank in there. And then the whole issue of zoning right now, basically the lot on which it sits is 3/4 of that entire lot, and certainly that would be most inappropriate. And so we would have to cut it back to a much, much smaller lot and talk to the zoning board of appeals about doing it in a manner that's consistent with the rest of the 1/4 acre or so lots down Main Street. But that's really up in the air right now. We're looking at all sorts of opportunities, and to us, it's important that a historical structure be preserved, but not necessarily on that site, and we would certainly prefer that it be truly a historical structure as opposed to a highly modified historical structure all in 1950s that it currently is. So, frankly, it's in a cocktail right now.
So, as far as your phasing goes, though, you would start, I don't have an order of conditions prepared because I figured we would just recap what we had done at the site visit and then find out if there's other questions or any other things that you'd want to address before we would talk about an order of conditions. But if you were going to be doing phasing and we issued an order in July, would you start doing other demo then and that would
And
come
again,
later?
it very much depends on what makes sense in terms of the overall demolition. Obviously, mobilizing and doing demolition for the entire site where 715 to be included makes an awful lot more sense, and we may actually delay it in order to accommodate whatever decision is being made about 715.
Okay.
If that decision
So,
is-
I guess the other thing, just being, I can't remember if we had it in your notes or if we talked about it, are we talking about doing any of this when it's low flow then?
Yes.
So like if we
Yeah.
didn't do it this
Yeah.
summer, then we're talking about waiting?
It could
Okay.
be delayed further.
Yeah, it's certainly to everybody's advantage to do a low flow. Just the construction is a big issue.
So there'll be a number of phases to this.
Inevitably.
When you decide about the disposition of the building, but also when people decide what they really want to do.
And it's basically three major phases. First of all, the demolition. Secondly, the real remediation, in which, frankly, the real remediation will be, in all probability, the removal of the hot spot that you saw with the hurricane fence around it. And then what we would like to do is have a much better idea of what the actual site preparation looks like with the final vision in place, and do the final remediation and capping and use restrictions and all the rest of that all at once. So it would be demolition and remediation and site preparation as close to each other as we can do it, so that we don't have to come in with a series. But right now, we're stepping back, to be perfectly honest, and we'll be going out with surveys and what the architects call charrettes. Actually, it's community-based planning where we sit down with a survey and a number of the stakeholders and figure out the most appropriate use for this. And one of our challenges is that public perception looks at this part of the property, and that's it, when in fact, up here, there's an enormous amount of other natural property that we want to look into as well. Being the Conservation Trust, we're very, very interested in beyond a town common, what's behind it and what it connects to, a bunch of other things. So we're continuing to explore that. We'll present that in brief at the dinner and auction on Sunday. But after that, the survey goes out, and then Charette's will take all of the information of the survey and try to base the design on reality as well as input, which is always a challenge. I mean, the wetlands is very important, and to some degree, some of the things that have come up in discussions in the last few days, we had a big meeting in this room last night, was, well, why don't we start using the wetlands as a mechanism for teaching kids about wetlands? Why, is there a way that we could extend the trail with a boardwalk or whatever, so people can actually look down instead of walking through wetlands, and start tying that into the Four Winds program in the schools, et cetera, which it makes an awful lot of sense. So I think we're beginning to think maybe out of the box, but more in our box than we have in the past. So, yeah, long and the short of it is, we'll do the demolition, and then to the greatest degree possible, we'd like to have the demolition done in one fell swoop, and then the remediation and site preparation without having to remobilize operations. And then certainly we'll have come in with a plan for that and for some other conditions on that.
I think just adding to the point that I raised before about the low flow is also that, we would want to make sure that work was done so that the site gets stabilized satisfactorily, before
Absolutely.
winter and flood season or anything else. So, does anybody have other things that they want to talk about that they would potentially want to, have questions on before I try to draft something, or?
Any other questions, let us know.
So then you'd want
it's
to
gonna be
continue
next.
it so that we could, we usually try to continue it so, well, the hearing's open, so when I start to draft things, if there's questions that come up. Thank you. So, Dave, I'm sorry. So we want to continue it for the next meeting?
When's your next meeting?
July 15th, so we'd be at 8:30?
Mm-hmm.
July 15th, 8:30.
Make it your form to sign too. Do you want them to attend that, or you want it to just, I guess, after I know when I'm drafting the order of questions come up, I guess we would let them know. So, or if you want to check with us. You're welcome to attend, but if Brandon's checking his schedule.
We're here for a meeting every night. So.
What?
We're here for a meeting almost every night.
No, why not?
Well, it's turning very much into a community effort as opposed to a trust effort.
Great.
So a bunch of teams working on it.
Yeah, it's great. I love the Four Winds idea. It needs to be elf.
Well, and there's been a lot of discussion about getting kids in the woods again,
Yeah.
which is,
Well, I think you've got the invasive part of the project that would also be worth
Yeah.
teaching about early, right? Educating.
they can come remove our knotweed with them.
Yeah, manual labor, exactly.
What kind of root system does that have? A root system, how deep does it go?
It's pretty deep and it
Is
spreads
it?
very quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's amazing how you can cut it absolutely flat again and again and again and again. And there's enough nutrient in the existing root, so it just keeps coming back. And what'll kill it is, we'll probably get you too.
So disposal of that, it has to
Yeah.
be really, must have to be done really carefully, because I know that can sprout from just a little segment of stem.
What we've typically done is dry it out completely. Just put it out on rock and let it dry it.
The way they got us into the woods when I was a kid was they didn't have planned structured activities and do a lot, and they went into the woods.
Yeah, and it's interesting, the Nordic states at this point have pretty much eliminated playgrounds for that very reason. They would prefer to have kids out playing in the environment. And the irony that's been brought up a number of times recently is the kids are a whole lot safer now that they have cell phones. But unfortunately, it's the very cell phones and handhelds that are preventing them from going out. Okay.
All right, well, thank you.
Thanks.
All right.
We discovered further holes in plans.
Yeah.
All right, next up is case 401 Berlin Road, lot 4.
That's right.
Okay, give me a minute.
How you doing?
You guys could just introduce yourselves again. I think not everybody, I didn't maybe not everybody.
I'm Paul Case, how you doing? I'm Paul Case.
Hi, Matt Morrow. You guys met you before.
I'm Max, still prospective.
An intern.
Yeah.
Okay, so what?
So this was continued, because they were waiting to get information from Mass Natural Heritage.
What you got?
Which we did. They gave us their okay to go based on the previous permit. It's in addition, it's like an amended permit.
Okay.
Because they don't segment their permits or segment the impacts on the systems.
But can I just say before he goes on, even though it was continued, we haven't really opened it to discuss it at all. Like, it was continued without us having plans out or looking at
Okay,
anything.
so we need to look at the.
Yeah, so it's a brand new review. It's just, it wasn't a new hearing notice because we had already opened the hearing.
Okay. So.
Did you bring plans?
Actually, I don't have a hard copy. I have just PDF copies. I'd given all my hard copies between DEP, Natural Heritage, and you guys, given everything I had away in the engineering.
Me too.
Well, I want these back. Of course. Since you don't have anything.
Give a little background on this entire right-of-way and especially, it's turned into a common driveway and how it came about and finger gift and all that.
Well, I was gonna let them start with the presentation and see if they touch that. If not, we can bring that up.
Are you referring to this driveway here?
Right-of-way from the road back.
Well, why don't you give an overview of the site and how you're getting there and why you're going the way you're going and why you're proposing what you're proposing, right?
Okay, well, I mean, essentially what we have is we have an existing common drive here. The area that you see proposed essentially goes into my client's lot, which is designated as Lot 4. Actually, if you look at my tab a little bit, you could probably zero in on some of the detail, but what is essentially proposed is the construction of a single-family house with a septic system. The existing site, some of you may have seen while you were up there, they're going in as an existing cart road. The house actually is proposed to go right through the middle of the existing cart road. There will be grading, and there's more detailed plans here that show the grading. For the soil absorption system, in orange is the 100-foot buffer zone, in green is the delineated wetlands. The terrain that you have right here is essentially either the cart road or the little grass field here. The trees essentially start down over around here. The grading in the buffer zone is to both accommodate the yard and the grading off of the soil absorption system. The grading is proposed to be no more than a 2-foot regrade. And essentially what would be replanted on there is the approved custom fescue mix that we have from the previous order of conditions. The particular fescue mix that we're using, I actually got the original quote from New England Wetland Plants, but Ernst Seed out of Pennsylvania is doing the compounding for me now because I wound up saving a little bit of money from them.
What was the reason the house couldn't be further away so that the grading doesn't really?
Zoning.
Oh, okay.
Well, what are the setbacks?
In this area, I believe it's 30, 30, and 30. It's 34.2 feet.
Is it because it's a
right here.
backland lot or something?
Yes.
Or?
Yeah, and your lot line is essentially a stone wall right here.
So that looks like more than 30 feet. What's
It's
the
30,
scale?
34. It's a 20
Oh.
scale.
Okay.
Closest point comes 34.2 feet. So,
And then it can't be turned?
Yeah, I was gonna say, could it be?
Well,
Rotate.
you start rotating it, you're gonna have to start rotating your septic system. And
So-
that could lead to design issues.
Matt, can I just bring up, so the commission's position is to avoid any activity in the resource areas. So that's why I think you need to explain all those reasons why you can't avoid that. I mean, you can still avoid it, you can put a retaining wall and not grade, right?
If you put a retaining wall in at the 100-foot buffer zone, you're basically gonna be putting a retaining wall right at the front door,
Yes.
okay? And right at the front door, and I mean, you know, your entrance functionality just basically goes away.
That's not our issue, that's why you need to think about how you can avoid it.
This is the front, not that.
Well, I think we have, okay, again, I mean, everybody walked up here, although these have a lot of squiggly lines on it, this is pretty flat in here, okay, this whole area is flat. When we were up there, we were talking about how to take advantage of the views, okay, whether we look at the sunset, which is to the west over here, or the pond, or whatever. I don't know how much less of an impact we're talking about. We're talking about 2 feet of grading.
Right, what's the closest point to the edge of the wetland with the grading?
50 feet.
So we're talking about 50 feet of grading in the buffer zone.
You're talking at your closest point.
Yeah, but if you're talking 50 feet, then you're talking 50 feet back
Yep.
of grading in the buffer zone.
Yep.
What's this area like now?
It's basically just grass. It's a field. It's a combination field and cart path. Like I said, your tree, you know, any of your trees don't start until you're over here. And this actually goes down the hillside. Essentially what happens, if you try to move the house around, you're gonna have to move the septic system. The septic system was precariously placed to avoid going into the 100-foot buffer zone. You essentially have a property line that skews this way, which is an existing stone wall.
So if this were just rotated on this point to bring it like that?
It's not gonna-
It would be too close, is that what you mean?
Now, if you rotate the house,
No, you can
you're
rotate it a little
you're
bit.
gonna have to rotate the septic system. If you rotate it to the degree where you wanna pull the grading out, it would have to go back, you'd violate your zoning. Regardless of whichever way you angle this house, you're still gonna have grading in the buffer zone.
Unless you use a retaining wall or,
Or, still the idea is to have less grading in the
right.
percent.
I mean, with the septic system, you can use the clay barrier, you can use other devices to minimize the grading.
And this is the front of the house, not this? Somehow when I look at.
Well, I mean, if you, the front of the house was here, you'd be basically looking at your neighbor, whereas this faces the road.
What's the
Well,
matter?
it faces
Everybody
the
goes in and
pond.
out through the garage anyway.
What did you say?
Everybody goes in, it's New England, everybody goes in and out through the garage or the back door. The front door, you don't even shovel near it. It's just, you know, it's not
So
used.
we can't just like say to you, oh, that looks fine, without you, like, I can't write an order of conditions without you effectively saying what you have done to avoid, minimize, and mitigate for the work. So that's what I'm trying to get out of your,
Due to the setbacks, okay, and then the restrictions, this is the best plan that we think we can come up with that's functional.
You also got the fact that it basically, the proposed driveway going off the existing drive going into the property, the house is blended in to go right in with the existing access, so we don't have to start moving the driveway access around.
Yeah.
so if you were to grade that area and the commission was to say, okay, but it's not to be a lawn, it can't ever be maintained as a lawn, how is that gonna affect you?
Yeah, I don't think we'd want to do that either.
Okay, so I think you need to move it away from the wetland. I mean, away from the buffer zone, so that you can have a little bit of
Well,
lawn.
the thing you have to keep in mind is, if we do that alteration in the buffer zone, we're gonna have to plant a custom grass mix made for the turtle,
Yes,
because it's a blaming turtle.
yeah, so we don't want a lawn there, and we don't want it mowed because of,
Right, so it doesn't sound like this is a good place to have the front door anyway, and then if you wouldn't have a lawn.
But even if you move that front door, okay, this point's still going to stay the same, relatively the same.
well, maybe you have a small retaining wall around that section. You do on other lots that you've built. I mean, I've seen your retaining walls to minimize grading on some of the other ones you've done.
Oh, there's only been one of them, okay, and that's the one we're building now, but that was a lot going down a hill. This is.
Well, Manor
this is-
Road, you had one too.
This is almost a completely flat piece of land.
So the grading is your.
The grading is very minimal. Okay, although you're into it, what is existing grade here now? Matt, I can't read it upside down.
Well, it's not on the plans, but I can tell you what this would be 370, this would be 368, 366, 364.
So the existing grades aren't on there?
The existing
Yeah.
grades, they go
These
up,
are-
there. It should be on the other plans.
So you're building it up to level the place where you're putting your house on it? Is that what you're doing?
No, we're just basically reshuffling the grades over.
This is 364.
You're smoothing it out? What are you actually
Yeah,
doing?
Smoothing it out.
I understand.
Excuse me.
Yeah,
There should be existing grades on this one. Here's your existing grade. There's 364, this would be elevated up to, this 362, this would be elevated up to 364, 364 would be elevated up to 366.
So 2 feet of fill.
so it's about
So
two
it'd be about 2
feet,
feet.
okay, to blend it in.
And it's not, it's not gonna be the sandy soil that the turtle would need, or the fill?
The fill, it would have to be.
So did Heritage require that?
No, actually, it would be a natural assumed part of the plan, because that's what we'd have to do in order to plant.
We would take the material that's coming out of the hole and use it right there, so it's the
Which
same material.
Is that
Same.
sandy?
Yeah, it's the same material.
I mean, I don't know, I haven't looked at the site really for that.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I mean, there's,
Anyways, there can be differences on sites, like you can have it sandy on the slope now, and then you could have a big piece of ledge somewhere, so I don't know, I haven't looked at your site for this.
okay, but this here is pretty consistent, okay? This isn't like the soils in the front. This was really, I don't know, we have the system itself here, the test pit on.
Do you want to do a site visit, you guys, have it
Yeah.
located in the field? Have this-
I haven't seen this. I went to a site visit last fall maybe and saw, further.
Yeah, it was that cold rainy day.
The last time we were up there, I thought the word was, it was not going to require any work in any zone, so we didn't really get concerned with it. What would happen if you didn't do the grading that you're doing?
Well, I'm looking at
What would
that
it look
myself.
like?
Well, that's what I'm trying to see. You got a 372 floor, you got a 373 here. You got 372, this, right here, what is this? I gotta follow it. What is this line right here?
That's the 368 line.
So you got so this is 366?
It's gonna go into 366.
Okay, so you're at 366. You're gonna leave two feet of fill, okay, for the foundation, okay, we're 370. Okay, so basically, you're okay, you're at 366 there. I mean,
So, I mean, you have steps that are 2 feet to get up to the house?
yeah.
Why is the house so high in the air? What's it, why
No,
is
it's
it?
not. It's, okay, the foundation, okay, you only want two feet of foundation showing.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's what I'm saying, you're gonna grade to that. And the further you take it out of the ground, okay, then the more impact you're going to have. So basically, we're putting it almost on grade, with 2 feet out of the ground. And it's just that this goes off and trying to blend the septic system in.
So that if you pivoted it just a few feet, it would make a big difference?
I have no issue with that. I mean, we can draw that in like so, okay, and that would be fine. And that can base it.
Yeah, and then you're
Well,
going to have...
I think,
Well, there's gonna be some grading. I mean, I don't want to mislead, okay?
well, it doesn't have to be. Your job, you need to show that it needs to, that you can't avoid it. That's the main task, and so far, you haven't tried to show that you can't avoid it. I mean, and so I think there's 2 things. One is that avoiding the work, and then 2 is what it's gonna be like afterwards. And I think you need to think about that, because it isn't intended to be a lawn area if it's within the resource area.
But that's what it is now.
No, it's not. No, it's not. It's not a homeowner's lawn there now. It was a woods, they cleared it, and it's maybe some field now. It's not a lawn, a homeowner's lawn.
It's been a field for,
It's not a lawn.
That's not a mowed lawn. That's a-
well, no, nobody lives up there. Nobody-
Right,
Yeah.
right. And so that's what I'm saying.
No,
It's not, the resource area, especially under the bylaw, you can't change that unless you can show that you can't avoid it and you can't mitigate for it. So it's not like we're looking to, I mean, you have to prove that you can't do these things.
The easiest way to do that, Bob, is to pivot the house,
Yeah,
okay? And then have the engineer go into a detailed go into a narrative as to why the septic system can't be tweaked, and if grading is necessary to accommodate this, and why.
Yeah, so the septic system, I mean, we see all the time clay barriers, we see all the time retaining walls, we see all the time ways of minimizing the grading for the septic system. So yeah, I mean, not
But
just a
this isn't
narrative
for
as
the
to what.
septic.
What?
This isn't for the septic system.
It's certainly not clear to me why pivoting a couple of feet affects
Right, would
the placement of the septic tank.
I'm not suggesting I know that answer, okay? So let's say it came right off the back wall like that,
Yeah.
okay? You know, I mean, that's still gonna be there, and there'll still be some minimal grading
Well,
there.
so it would be less though, so we're asking you to minimize. If you can't totally avoid, then minimize.
It's reasonable.
Yeah, no, I have no issue with that.
Really reasonable. And I think a site inspection is a good idea.
So just the other thing that I don't know, and I wasn't there when you did the site visit in the rain that time, but I thought that there was some suggestion that there may be some need for some pre-treatment off of that driveway coming down towards the stream.
On that side, I mean, actually, when we had gone to that sidewalk, it was more for the driveway.
Right,
We actually
right.
just viewed this, so we haven't actually looked at this site.
The common driveway area for the work with the abutters is gonna be filed under a separate NOI.
Okay.
It's also gonna be filed as a separate NOI with MISA. They're gonna give a separate evaluation on that.
Okay.
Any attenuation that would be proposed for mitigation would be proposed under that notice of intent.
Okay, separate from the house.
Well, I don't know that that should be the case without looking at it, because, I mean, you've got pavement proposed in this plan, you know, that's coming down, that's not paved now, so I just think we should look at it. Maybe, I don't know, and I don't know when that filing will ever happen. So, I'm not sure that we should separate it completely.
I
Well,
mean,
didn't we talk about that? We were gonna do it all in one, and then everybody said to separate it. I thought that's what we
Well,
talked about.
the reason I separated it, and the reason why I separated it is if we filed one NOI for the driveway and the house, the abutters' names would be on this property, okay? Which means they would have some liability associated with any activities he does on this property, okay? So to avoid that situation, you file an NOI on this, and then you file an NOI on the area that affects strictly the abutters and him with respect to the driveway. I didn't want the abutters' names attached to the house, because they would, by default, have the potential to absorb any liability if anything screws up.
I'm just saying, I think we should look at the drainage associated with that section of the
Well,
road.
we should, and where on this driveway, where it's a common driveway, it feeds off at that point, once you cross the bridge. Where is that driveway going to initially belong to that house? Because that section going up to the stone wall, that's where the drainage that we felt there should be some kind of,
Where?
it's forked off, and it goes,
Yeah.
What happens is that the driveway goes up, and it forks
It
off on the
forks,
left.
right.
Okay, and there's an area that's basically a hard pan gravel packed cart road that's been used basically forever. And that's where his portion of that end of the driveway starts.
now is that at the base of it, or is that at the stone wall?
No, it's at the base of it.
Okay, because we will have drainage issues coming down off of that, and that's where we felt on that side of the bridge, that you were gonna need some kind of basin to catch, coming off both driveways.
Maybe it's like a storm scepter or something,
Right,
you know,
something to catch it on that side.
leaching catch basin. I don't know whether it might be too much groundwater to do that. Too high groundwater.
Because it also had to be out of the trailhead, which was
Right.
also right there. So that was part of the conversation that we had on that rainy day. On both sides of the bridge, you were gonna have to do something.
Yeah, and then we went,
And then we walked up, we looked at the site, but we didn't look at the site as,
With the project in
with a
mind.
project in mind. You told us that eventually there was going to be a project.
right.
So we just kind of like looked at it, just to get an overview, but we.
So you need to look at the
Right, but
wetland
the-
delineation, right?
Right,
You know, you haven't done that yet.
Then that's fine.
but we will need to know, you know, if you are separating into projects, we'll have to figure out something on that drainage coming off that driveway.
Right, but just to keep in mind, the storm scepter system and that type of drainage mitigation is for the paving of the whole common driveway as a whole. Storm scepter system isn't really, at least in my opinion, not necessary for something this small, but something could be done
Right.
just to mitigate the area. And that probably would be best done on a site inspection, just grading, a little bioswale, just something that could be done.
Okay, but this is what I want to be clear, okay? When, maybe the driveway should have came in first, okay? Because all we're looking to do is pave the driveway.
Well, I thought it was coming in first. 'cause that's
Yeah, it
what-
did come in.
that's-
It came in as a request, and then we said it needed a notice of intent.
Okay, so all we're looking to do, we're not looking to do any drainage on that because that opens Pandora's box, where I'm just not willing to do that, okay? Then it's gonna go back to planning board, I've already met with planning, they said, listen, it's your driveway, you do what you want, you pave it. What I wanna be clear about is that for that part of it, we're looking to get, okay, an affirmative on, we're going to pave that. Now, when we come back in for this, if you want to see some drainage on this,
Yes.
that's, well, okay, let me just finish. If you want some drainage on this one, okay, that's all on my dime, and it's all, very reasonable, and they don't need to go back, okay, to reinvent the wheel for that. Okay, so I just want to make sure everybody's on at least understanding what the intent has always been. And I feel like sometimes I leave here and I think I hear one thing and I come back and I...
Well, I'm the same way with
Yeah.
you then, because I
Yeah.
think we have
No, no.
something and then we come back in and we're
Yeah, no,
talking about something
no,
else.
and this isn't a bait or switch.
Yeah, no,
No.
because that whole...
I don't think she means it that way.
No.
We come in and we say what we expect, and then you come in and say something different. I think it's your bait and switch, not our bait and switch.
That fork
Yeah.
was always part of the driveway conversation.
I always thought, okay, that the driveway was the first thing we were addressing.
Right.
Okay?
Us too.
The whole thing about, does it need to go to planning board, does it need to get, okay, turnouts, is it?
No.
So I met with Erica. Okay, Erica walked out, she met with the planning board chairman and quote, you're gonna pave the driveway.
Yeah, we're happy with paving.
It's out of our jurisdiction, okay? So we're gonna come back here, we're gonna ask for that. So let's assume that just says, okay, we're fine. Now we're gonna come back with this. Then if you want a structure here or whatever, and you wanna tie that into there, so on and so forth, that's fine, okay, and I don't mind doing that.
My question was, where does that driveway begin? Because that was
Yeah,
some kind of system needed to be on that side of the bridge, and it was because of the slope. It's a good sized slope going up to that house. And that was part of the
right.
original conversation on the driveway.
And
that's what I'm saying.
we could take that down.
Yeah.
Okay, okay, we can cut that, but I think that's more of an impact than, okay, to put some kind of drainage system in there.
Well, the thing is with the driveway too, is that there's specific requirements that MISA wanted from us regarding shots, elevation shots, grading shots on the driveway, which the engineers are in the middle of doing. They had to go back out in the field and take some more elevation shots. So it's been taking them some time to get all the specifics on that plan. But that was based on Brent Powers sending me an email saying, hey, I need this exact specific information on that long common driveway.
Yeah. As far as the driveway goes, I felt we're
Yeah.
moving along on that. I'm just double checking.
Right, but MISA is very specific on what they want to see as far as their information, so the engineers had to go back out and do some more work.
Where are we on that NOI?
You haven't filed it yet.
Okay.
In other words, I'm just waiting for Mark to give me the final grading plan, and then I can go ahead with the NOI to MISA and to here.
Okay. And at that point, so, I mean, this is a chicken or the egg thing, is that what should come in now?
No,
You mean
you've
the
already got
NOI?
this before us, just keep moving along
Yeah,
with
so
it.
Yeah.
Set that site visit up, and then meantime, you're gonna start working on another filing for the common driveway. And maybe it'll tie together, maybe it won't, but what I was just saying is that that section of driveway should be addressed with this notice of intent, because you're proposing it under this application. not a separate one.
Yeah, I don't, that could be settled with a site inspection. We could come up with some pretty good ideas on site. I don't think it's anything that's going to be difficult to implement.
We have a question in the audience.
Yeah, I'm representing Historical Commission in this matter. Anybody know the actual width of the current sod driveway?
The what driveway? Paved driveway?
The soil driveway from the road down to,
Yeah, I think it's either 11 or 12 feet.
pardon me?
It's either 11 or 12 feet.
Okay. And is there currently a pull-off on that driveway?
No.
For visitors to the old Fry burial ground?
No.
Okay. So all the Historical Commission wants to do is make sure that there's still access for the burial ground. And since previously, if you wanted to visit there, you go down, turn your car around, and then sort of pull it over between the stone wall and the 12-foot driveway.
Yeah,
You put a car there simply so other people go through.
well,
And we just want to make sure that there is going to be some area to pull off there for like one car.
well, how I understand it, that's private property, it's not up to me. I don't know that you have.
Well, it's a
any-
right-of-way that's been
For the
given to
burial?
those backland houses. That has turned into a quote-unquote common driveway.
I respectfully, I'm not sure that's true.
Well, all
Okay.
I'm saying is there has to be public access to that old Fry burial ground. There is now, and it'll have to remain.
Well, yeah, but I don't know if it's legal access. Okay.
Well, that's what we have to find out. Is this a common driveway? Is it a right-of-way?
It's a common
The
driveway.
records are available from the early 1990s, when it was created. And that's all I'm here to represent, is we just
But
need
does it have to do
make
with
sure
this lot or with the common driveway?
Has
The
to be
burial
common
ground is
driveway,
over
common
here.
driveway.
Okay? This is your proposed driveway in
Yeah.
here. It's probably right about here. They mow, DPW mows the lawn in the field that walks over to the enclosed burial
Well,
ground.
say, as part of the proposal for the driveway, weren't we gonna do a turnaround? Wasn't
Yeah,
there
there is
one
something
car
drawn in
turnaround?
there.
But
I think there is something coming in for the driveway proposal that we'll have.
that's not true, though.
That's
Oh,
gonna
okay.
cut into, that's gonna cut
After-
into the
yeah,
natural thing.
After conferring with the abutters,
Yeah.
the abutters said, no, we don't want people parking there, okay? And that would cut me, because that's their property.
You know, which I get, but wasn't there a legal ruling if the driveway was long enough, there had to be at least one turnaround?
No, because all we're doing is paving, and
This
there's the other
Before
reason.
before we get too far
Yeah.
down this
Yeah.
discussion, is this discussion relevant to this parcel that
No.
we're talking
No,
about?
really not.
Absolutely right.
So this-
You're
so this-
absolutely
so
right.
this is-
So I suggest that we,
Yeah.
Well, but you're going to file a separate NOI for the driveway.
That's correct.
Or the right-of-way, or
That's
whatever it's
correct.
called. That has to be all figured out legally by town council, whatever, who owns it, who can go down there. Right now, it is public access. Thank you.
So where does this leave us now?
Yeah, I think you were gonna schedule a site visit and talk about what you want
Do we want to,
placed out in the field.
if I do this Sunday?
Sunday might be tight. In
Yeah.
theory, I'd have something at 10. as
I'd
well,
rather
so-
do it during the week if that's possible.
Okay.
which week?
Probably this coming week.
That's fine. I mean, I'm virtually available every night but tomorrow, any early in the morning.
Friday, Monday, and Tuesday.
That's what you have or what you don't have?
That's what I have.
Fridays are always bad, because it's usually at night.
Well, Thursday I have an all-day wetlands class. I can do any other day during
Next
this
Monday or
week.
Tuesday would work for me.
And I won't even
That's
around
right.
Monday or Tuesday
Yeah,
next week.
Next Monday or Tuesday would work for you?
Yeah.
I think that would work for me right as well.
What time? What time?
But weeknights don't really work as well for Janet.
It doesn't typically work for me, so Janet, I mean, maybe we could go together
Yeah,
during the
why don't you and
day.
I go during the day, that would be better. I don't have a car in the evenings. So usually I do. So, yeah, if you wanna, you and I can go, are you here next week?
One of us can pick you
I was
up.
gonna say, I can pick you up too.
Yeah, I mean, you can do that and go with a group, or I am here, I don't remember if there's any days I'm off. I think I'm here all next week, I think, it's one day, I'm not quite into next week.
Okay, all right, well, I'm sure we can
Next
find
week.
something
Yeah.
in the morning.
Yeah.
So you guys can go,
October.
what works for you?
That works for
We'll
me.
look in next week.
When?
I go either time.
Can we do 5:30 or 6?
Yes.
5:30?
5:30 Monday?
5:30 Monday night, which would be the 23rd. Does that work?
Okay. If you could stake out the corner of
The house?
Yeah.
Field's getting pretty,
As long
I
as
have
somebody
no-
sends me an email, giving me a reminder.
I think we took that point
Mhm.
right here, maybe stay from here to here, so at least we get
We
some
have
kind of
another-
reference.
Yeah.
Okay, just,
Anything else?
just, you know, we put the corners in, and basically,
This is the wild down here.
yeah,
So are you guys gonna look at the wetland line? Matt, you're gonna be there?
Yes.
Yeah, you can look at it.
I mean, we can look at it as well after, but I just want to know that you are gonna get to look at it.
Okay, so Monday at 5:30 for you guys?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we're not all figure it out.
Okay. Is that fine with you, Bob, if Dan and I go another time?
yeah, sure.
Okay, so then we continue this on July 15th.
Yep.
What time do we have to?
8:45, 8:45, 9.
The last one was 8:30, so 8:45.
July 15th.
So let me just give you a form to sign.
Easy go.
Full night.
And they have to start serving beer or something.
Conference, you said coffee.
Well, make mine root beer.
Anybody have a World Cup score?
No.
Not everybody likes to know those, Jim.
Here, let's go.
They're gonna watch them later.
Oh, that's, yeah, fair
Good
enough.
point.
You know, I never understood that, okay,
I've never done it, so I don't think of it.
You know, my family DVRs everything.
Yeah, I couldn't.
You know, I'm certainly willing to
You don't have
accommodate
to
people,
play, it
it's just
doesn't
that I
matter.
don't
You can
remember.
watch the game later.
Someone's gonna ruin it on you sooner or later.
Fair enough.
Soccer's different because there's no commercials, but anything else,
No?
football, baseball, anything, if you can watch it recorded on a DVR, it's a whole new world.
There's no commercials, there's no
It's so
scoring.
fantastic.
Isn't half the time.
What?
Yeah, I don't
Well, yeah,
watch
well,
TV
you know, if you look at, I
anymore.
think they said for like
Okay,
the
go
2.5
back and
hour
get on the
football
meals so
game,
I
it's
can
like
fast
17
forward.
minutes of action.
So it's a day later, you know,
Like, when they score, they go to
I watch so
commercial.
few
Yeah.
Then they
things,
kick
if I miss
off,
it, I
and
miss
then
it.
they go
I
to commercial.
watch like 20.
You know, three and out,
It's like
you know, if they're gonna
24.
punt, they go right to commercial.
Yeah.
So you can watch like 12 minutes of commercials.
It's very
It's
addictive.
action, which is fun, if you're hanging out, it's like, just wanna watch the game,
Yeah.
it's great, it's like score. Skip
I
ahead,
don't
skip
really
ahead, and kick off, and
I
skip
watch
ahead,
them
skip ahead.
before, because
There we go.
it's
That
over
one. Oh,
hockey every
it's just-
score.
I saved a lot of time.
Oh, awesome, thank you.
Watch the game an hour late.
Yeah,
Fantastic.
All right,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
in a few days.
So, they may not entertain people from outside of town unless it's time, but
Well, if the gas company's gonna do that, they may not wanna entertain anybody, the way
they're
they
gonna
bring
get the
it.
questions first, you know, in advance.
You know, one of those, amazing,
So, deep
gas pipelines.
That's
Got a
why
lot.
I hear score later. I guess I won't watch time. Whatever, I'll find something else to do.
Let's find the absolute worst resource area we could put it in
Exactly,
and put it in through conservation lands, and we'll put the gas line right there.
right.
Yeah, the town and the administrator in Tingsboro, conservation director up there, they want to not only put it through 2 pieces of my conservation land that are rare species habitat, they want to directionally drill under the Merrimack River.
Yeah, we
That's
have,
what
we
I
have the-
said.
we have the rare
Really?
species habitat too.
Yeah, it's,
Yeah.
wow, that's all I can say.
Take care.
Take it easy.
Bye-bye. Okay, so next we had DPW ratify emergency certification.
Okay. Do you want to take it up first? That should be pretty quick,
What do I do there?
if you remember to come back to it.
Yeah, welcome back. Okay,
Okay.
so we go right to Century Mill Estate. Come on up.
Hey, everybody.
So,
So initially, we were going to be reviewing the plant inspection and compliance report and consider releasing of escrow funds, but then we had this more pressing issue coming up, which was a violation of the order of conditions that I guess Carol can describe. I haven't seen any of this.
well,
Except in the.
I was, yes. No, it was reported to me that there was work that was occurring on the far side of the wetland crossing on Road A. And when I went out to look at it yesterday, vehicles, large, like really big excavator type of vehicles, had gone through the aura, the vegetated wetland, the intermittent stream, endangered species habitat, et cetera. And it looked like there was at least a couple of vehicles on the far side, so I'm assuming at least twice the vehicles went over, but I know from the conversation that we had with the town engineer that at least one had. And the area is not where the wetland crossing itself is. It's where there was an old cart road that we had actually walked it last week, and I had actually questioned whether anything had been going over there in the past because it seemed like there was a lot of leaf litter. And he had said, there shouldn't be. So it was really clear that that was an area where it was a resource and it shouldn't be. The other thing that I think it noted in the enforcement order was that it's also work that was in phase 3. We hadn't really approved phase 3 activity starting. When we'd been on the site visit last Wednesday, we had noticed that there had been a lot of tree clearing, again, not within our jurisdictional area, but within phase 3. And there had been some, Andy had indicated that that we were going to be doing some testing for ledge to determine where the ledge was for the road, and that they had cleared in preparation for that. At that time, I had suggested that, they really should let Natural Heritage know, because the phase 3, again, is a lot of that area is within their jurisdiction. And I guess I had thought that was going to happen. It did happen, but it happened because I ended up calling them, in addition to talk to them about some of the details that we had discussed for the crossing that I wanted to ask questions about. And when I spoke with them, I found that they hadn't had a call yet on the work.
So obviously, the order was issued. We've gone through the order and want to review it with the commission to resolve the problem, resolve the issue. As you guys see from the order, there were 6 or 7 requirements that Carol did before. And we just wanted to go over them and make sure that we fully expect to have everything done tomorrow. So that we'll gain compliance with your requested modifications. Starting with number 2, I obviously answered Carol. Starting with number 3, I guess. This is a road.
Are you looking at, can I just make sure, are you looking at the bylaw order that I issued today, or the Wetlands Protection Act? Okay, that's the bylaw order. Okay, just want to pull it.
Yeah.
I want to hear the originals for you. I didn't mail them, I'm not sure how email is supposed to.
No, I got it.
Okay, well, those are the originals.
Oh, thank you. Okay, anyway. Carol, as we understood it, number 3 on your list, that was a Road C requirement as opposed to a Road A requirement?
No, this was meant to be Road A. So if you pull up
Q3
the
to Q4.
plans, yeah.
Yeah, so we just want to make sure that we're doing what you want to have done, because I say it's not going to get done tomorrow.
Can I specify the sheet on that one? Sheet 42.
On the right, first of all.
Oh, wait, sheet 42 does look like Road C, sorry.
Yeah,
I
that's
think-
why I want to get it clarified, to make sure that we're on
Okay.
the same page here.
Yeah, I thought you were being doubly thorough.
So I think I used the template, I was trying to get this done quickly yesterday from the last enforcement order. Sorry, there was a template. So install orange snow fencing along the outer edges of the adjacent upland resource area, running parallel to the building vegetation. Oh wait, I'm reading the fourth. Install stake cables. Okay, so yeah, that must be from the original one.
So we're talking A.
So we would amend
Right.
it to remove, by removing that one.
Delete number 3.
Okay.
Because I think that, don't I have it below for erosion control? Staked,
You
the filter fiber fencing, let's see.
you pretty much blocked the,
Yeah, so 6 has installed
crossing
sediment and
from two
erosion
sides.
controls. So I think that is what should have been in place, so
what
three.
Are we deleting 3? Is that what it is?
Yes, it doesn't,
Yeah,
that doesn't. seem
that was,
to
that we figured that was for roads, so we
Yeah.
just wasn't sure what you
Yeah.
needed there. Going on to number 4, Andy, can you,
I just want to make sure we're doing it with,
yeah. A33 to A4 to 536.
Carol, is this basically, I think, depicts?
Sorry?
I think this, in yellow, basically depicts what you want us to do. It's the snow fencing along the 100-foot buffer, and then right across, and then come up this way.
Yeah, I think that I'm trying to get the 100-foot buffer line. So I went out from A33, which is sort of the
Right,
most
yes.
eastern point,
Yep.
and then it came around to A46 was just about at where the road crossing
Right.
is, and then it
Yes.
turned to another flag number,
The J.
J,
Right.
yeah.
So am I correct in basically, you want a snow fence that runs continuously like this?
Right, so at this point, on the other side on Road C, it really helped having that bright orange visible fence, you know, that we could walk over if we needed to, but obviously if the equipment wasn't, they'd have to remove it, so I thought that was.
Yep.
Now, just to add, on Thursday morning, I'm gonna go out with Natural Heritage Endangered Species Program. I did tell him that I put that in the order, actually I sent him a copy of the order, but
Good.
I did want to make sure that they didn't have any concern with having the fence, and I think it's probably, hopefully, just a temporary measure until other things.
As far as National Heritage is concerned, they were actually out last week. We've been,
Well, not to the site. We
Yeah.
had a meeting
Hmm.
at Natural Heritage's office last week with Mike Carter, the design engineer. They, all of the items that, the small remaining items that needed to be sort of squared away with them for us to begin, were squared away, and they are going to issue their letter authorizing us to proceed. The only issue, it's not really an issue, but was that there's a couple lots we're putting a restriction on, a clearing restriction, other than that deed restriction on a couple lots.
64, 65, and 66 to be exact, so
Yeah.
we're just straightening up
Just-
that language right now.
They sent us their form, and we have to make it applicable to those lots and record it. But everything else was...
Right, so that actually goes to number 8, we're jumping around a little bit. So we certainly expect to have that in the very near future. Anyway, getting back to the requirements under number 4, then we were looking at J8 to J21.
Yeah.
let's see. J8 is down...
J8 was on the west side of the crossing. No, wait, sorry, it's on the, it's like right in the middle of the crossing.
Okay, I basically figured
Carol, again, it's sort of the 100-foot buffer
Yes,
on the other
right,
side.
right.
It's-
And I was only looking at the little plan.
Right.
And
It's
I'm
hard
trying
enough
to
to
do
find
this,
it
Yeah,
on
the
right.
big plan, yeah.
Right,
Okay.
even
but
with-
yes, that's the
And then
intention.
K1 to K26 is probably,
Yeah,
K1
and
same deal.
K26 ends at the stone wall, which is off Zen property, so.
K1 to K26. I did all this and then, you come here and you can't remember where it is. The flags.
Yeah, I think it's your purple line there.
This.
Yes, that purple line. That's the K.
This is the,
No?
no, these are the hay bales. These are all.
Oh, okay,
these are
well,
the-
it's in that vicinity.
Yeah.
This is K26,
Oh,
okay.
so that's really,
And it
it's
starts,
this.
K
Oh,
starts over
okay,
here,
it's
right here.
Okay,
Starts somewhere
yeah,
like that.
it's, you called out from here to here and then from here to.
Yes, because
there.
they were different
So,
flag numbers.
Again, it's, I was thinking you want snow fence along the 100-foot line.
Yes,
Is that correct? So here, across, and around.
yeah, yeah.
And then on this side, it'll be,
yeah, yeah, that's right.
and then I think, also over here, you have it.
Right. Yep.
okay.
We've put in the hay bales and silt fence here, Carol. This is in hay bales and silt fence.
Okay, but I don't think that's what I was looking for in this order.
Okay, well, and we put in the silt fence over here.
Yeah, I think what I was looking for is where the cart road crossing went through, not where the proposed work area was to go through. Is to have the erosion control
Right, so
put in
this will all
there.
be put on,
So
be done tomorrow.
the sediment and erosion controls between station 21 and 19, but it was where the equipment was
Right.
tracked through the wetland.
Right here.
Yeah, so through that cart road area there it was
Yeah.
tracked.
Where were we?
That was 6.
Okay. So, terrific. So number 7, certainly, there's already a significant amount of replication being done out there in accordance with the original subdivision plan. So, add whatever is necessary.
Yeah, I
Be in
think we can look at
compliance.
that on Thursday with Heritage
Which would be fun.
as well.
That would be great. As I said, number 8, we talked about briefly. There is this last restriction that we're just coming up with the language based on their template, and that should be approved in the next couple of days and reported next week. We should have their approvals hopefully next week, so that we can move forward with that. And this work will all be done tomorrow?
Yes.
Okay. So we'll have this should be in place when you come up with Natural Heritage for Thursday.
Okay.
Which would be
I
great.
think Fred Hamway was interested in coming as well. Erica was not in today. I don't know whether she's going to be interested, but it might sort of dovetail a little with the weekly site visits we were trying to do.
Mhm. Okay, good.
So I guess, just to the commission, I would say, this is the second enforcement order in a fairly short time. And I have some concerns that this happened at all, because we had just discussed it last week. And I have concerns that it was a site person who should have known not to go through the wetland. From what I understand, and I didn't talk directly with the person, but it was asked, and the equipment was brought through, it's clearly, wet area. I guess in the case when I drafted the first enforcement order, and in this case, I feel like the site isn't getting the proper site attention, like oversight by someone. And I was, it bothers me, that we're at this stage and that I can't be there routinely. And even on a weekly basis, that there's things that are happening on the site that we didn't talk about or that we didn't know were going to happen. And I was thinking that maybe there needs to be someone like what the planning board's had, like Fred Hamway, who's an inspector for the commission, you know, who can be there more regularly, especially if we move into doing phase 4 and phase 3 crossings at the same time. I just feel like I can't be at both spots. I can't be out there regularly. And I'm just not.
How often are you there and how often are you thinking of going?
Well, right now I go once a week,
Once a week.
but we spend a few hours, typically 2 to 3 hours.
And
seeing
still,
this.
this happens despite you going once a week?
Right,
Now, the first time, Andy wasn't there.
Right.
right.
Using, using spit.
This time, you were there.
I think this might happen on Father's Day, and I wasn't there. We hired two operators, two new operators. They started this Saturday and Sunday. And I'm thinking that's when that happened. We've been trucking whenever need be to go around to the other side. I in fact bought a truck. That's an on-road truck because we have a site truck, but it's not legal to bring on a road. And we actually went out and bought a regular dump truck that you see on the road because we don't go through there.
So when you're not there, there isn't somebody.
It's an active place. I would say sometimes we have 70 people working there. That's not an excuse. That this shouldn't have happened. It's was an existing path. It was a path that I'm sure for 100 years people went back and forth. We used to go back and forth prior to having an order of conditions, but shouldn't happen. But we typically, if we need to go the other side, we just have a trailer truck, take our equipment around on the road and drop it off at Century Mill.
But if you're there, it doesn't happen because you know what you can do.
I'm not able to watch what everybody's doing every minute. It's fairly, I think.
And you're working the equipment yourself a lot of times too, so.
Yeah, I mean, when this happened, I happened to be on the other side of the property, actually, on a bulldozer.
Oh, okay, so you were there.
Well,
Okay.
when I say that, what I meant when that happened, when they came out for their
I'm
site
just
walk.
trying to explore.
When Fred, I saw this.
If the two violations we had were times when you weren't available to personally supervise, whether there's some proxy that needs to pay more attention when you're not there. But that doesn't appear to be exactly the case, that it only happens when you're not available. Sometimes it happens when you are there too.
I think what Andy was saying was that he was there when I came out and did the site visit on
Right.
Monday, but he wasn't there on Father's Day.
Yeah.
But he wasn't there when the
crossing
happened. But, and as he said, there's no excuse, but my feeling is just that there's needs to be, I mean, when the project first started, there was a clerk of the works. There was somebody there who was in charge of making sure things were going, well. And, then that changed, and I don't really know when it changed or why it changed, but maybe they weren't doing road work at that point, and they didn't need that there anymore. But I feel like, the planning board has inspections done by the engineer really quite routinely when it's active work that they're interested in terms of the road work and checking to make sure, whether it's that there's proper, the fill doesn't have stumps and roots and other things that, are too sizable to be in fill, or that they are putting in the lifts of the road, whatever sizes. I just feel like there needs to probably be someone who can look at the wetland aspect of it. I have not put in seen or overseen a salamander barrier construction. I don't have the design yet in my hands for the crossing, because it's been worked through with Natural Heritage, but I don't have that yet, so I haven't been able to really evaluate it to see if it's anything that we would have some concerns with. There were a few things that I did want to talk to Heritage about on that, but I mean, it's not so relevant for tonight. The main thing is that if the commission agrees that they are able to move forward with phase 3 and phase 4, if we get to talk about that, I think that's going to be a lot of work, and I don't know really how you're planning to phase those together. Maybe we should talk about that a little bit, but I think there needs to be someone who does inspections for the commission on a more regular basis than I can get out there.
Sounds like on a daily basis.
Well, there may be periods it needs to be daily when they're doing work that's near the wetland, and at least if I continue to do the weekly site visits, then at least I can see, you know, how the progress has been, but I'm not necessarily there to make sure that, you know, something isn't going amiss or awry because I wasn't there, you know.
I agree with you, because there obviously seems to be a lack of knowledge on the part of the people that are there constantly. There's no any kind of training or, yeah. Well, I guess just knowledge of, you know, they look at a plan that says you don't go through here. That I feel you do, while you're in critical areas, doing critical things, you probably need somebody there, because you can't be in two places at one time. And, you know, yeah, one strike, two strikes, they're not going to three strikes.
Yeah.
I think we need to fix the issue before it happens. My opinion. Whether it's a daily visit or...
How much time on a per day basis are you talking?
Well, I think we haven't talked about phase 3 and phase 4. I think we would need to talk about that. I don't know right now because I'm not sure how you're planning to do them together. I mean, my understanding is that the Heritage Program does not want the work on Road A to be going on beyond August 15th. So there's a tight window of doing that activity, which I'm not sure, again, maybe it's, I don't know how many weeks it is of work. We have a schedule that they were going to revise that I haven't received quite yet, but maybe we can talk about the general length of time. And then same thing with Road C. You know, I'm not sure how long that period's going to take, but again, it's a little different window because if they start at July 1, I think you can go to October 1 or something like that. Is that right?
Natural Heritage.
Well, Road C, Natural Heritage isn't involved with it.
No, right. That they didn't say that you have to be done by August 15th.
Mike implied that when we met with him on Wednesday. Mike, that's what Mike told us.
Well, my question isn't about
I mean, I
calendar.
was at the meeting, they
It's
said.
the other way. How much time per day?
I know, I don't know that because I don't know what they're doing yet. Okay, so without talking about how the work is going to be structured and how it's going on, you know, if they're working in the wetland from 7:30 to 5:30 at night, then that's how many hours of the day somebody's maybe needs to check it, or maybe they need to go in the morning, they need to go in the middle of the day, and they go at the end of the day. I know Fred goes back and forth, you know, at different times depending on what they're doing. Sometimes he'll go through in the morning and they're not working in an area, and he might go back in the afternoon and see if they've moved over to that area. You know, so it's sort of fluid.
I have a question. I mean, is there any policy on how many violations can happen with an order of conditions still being good, or does it?
I don't think there's a policy. We've never had to revoke an order of conditions, but I mean, I was so frustrated yesterday. I did say that to Alan, that it's certainly an option that the commission has. You
Maybe
know,
for violation number 3, if that happens.
We've never had two violations within less than a month's time, approximately.
well, since I've been here, we've never had anything like on a subdivision site.
No.
No
I
violation.
mean,
No. No, we've had violations from people who didn't understand or didn't know, but it's very rare, if at all, that we've had people violating their orders of conditions.
Keep it, you know, I mean, it's not a defense, but keep them in. This is an area that in 3 weeks is being crossed,
Not that spot. That's not even where the crossing is.
10 feet over.
Okay, so, I mean, it may not have been altered. It's 10 feet closer to where the vernal pool is.
And it is an existing path. And
No.
the trees, I'm not saying it's, I just want to make sure we're on the, at least knowledgeable, the previous violation, again, was trees getting down. Trees were cut prior to July 1. They were trees that are going to be cut.
Right.
Yes,
But again,
but
it was
I'm just,
There's a
Yeah.
reason that there are certain certain dates after which these things can be done, just due to the impact of.
And, maybe it's on just the
I
part
mean,
of.
the site has a tremendous amount of oversight, and I'd really welcome you to come up and look at it and see how it's coming out, and it's really self-evident that somebody's paying very strict attention to it. We're not perfect, but if you come and look at the quality level of this development, it's really evident.
Now, I live not far away, and other than dealing with lawyers from time to time, I don't have a day job. So that doesn't mean that I'm free 8 hours a day every day,
Come on down.
starting tomorrow. But I'm in a better position to contribute to the oversight than probably any other commission.
That would be great.
But I urge you to come, come look at
I still
what
think
we've
you need
done.
someone who has the,
Well, I need some coaching in
yes, I was
terms of
gonna,
what I'm
and,
looking
I mean, I don't mean it in any negative way, but you need someone who's watched over the wetland crossings, wetland replication, the work in those resource areas, which I know you're learning, and I think you want to learn it. I think this is a great opportunity to learn it. But I think that both of these probably need somebody with the professional background to make sure that it's done properly.
What about having Brandon do it?
Does he get the time?
Well, I mean, he could certainly, maybe, I don't know, on some sort of a schedule. He's local, he's close, reasonably close by, if you wanted to.
Well, I mean, I certainly have no problem with Brandon. I just don't know, again, what we would want and whether he would be reporting to us. I feel like we need someone who's reporting to the commission like the town's consultant, planning board consultant does. That they're working to make sure that the town's interests are being protected. And in our case, it's protecting the resource areas, the wetland resource areas, that nothing else happens. They're not further damaged, whether it's during the crossing areas or during the period working up to that and after, while they're building.
It's
housing around
easier
there.
if you, right now, there are areas that people are not supposed to be in. Even I can monitor that. But once you get certain kinds of work can be done and certain can't, then it starts to get a little more complicated.
Well, once we actually start the work, all of our work is in between hay bale lines,
Yeah, but there's dewatering sometimes,
That's
there's,
true.
There's rainstorms that occur, there's removing sediment, that gets built up too high on something. There's things that just happen on a regular basis that I know I can't get out there to see on a daily basis.
I'd love it if the commission came out just to
Well, I
see
think
the
it's,
property.
whoever does this oversight, if you also, it would be great to have someone in addition to what you're thinking of, someone from the commission who is sort of intimately involved with this, because I know I don't really understand this property very well, and it's been a long and drawn out project, and I wasn't here when it started, and I missed some of the meetings, and so it'd be great if there was someone sort of assigned to this project on the commission who was,
Where do you live?
South Fulton Road. Since everybody in the world knows where Peter Bonazzoli lives, I'm across the road from him.
Is that where he
Yeah, I
hit?
know.
Oh, okay, I know where Peter is.
That's where the truck from.
You can't miss that.
And there you go. In fact, if the crossing is where I think it is, if it's right downhill from the first dead-end street that you come to.
In the development, you mean? Yeah.
You go up the hill, take your first right, go to the end, and then go downhill.
No.
Okay, so
Oh,
or is it the next street?
That's not the crossing we're talking about. That's not the crossing where this happened.
All right, because the first one.
That's the Road C crossing.
Yes.
That's the Road C crossing.
Because the Road C crossing, I was able to see that today when I walked the dog. So, I mean, I'm not.
This is Road A, this is
Yeah.
back to the main dragon up the hill.
Oh, so it's half a mile further up. It's that.
It's really almost in the middle of Road A, like the halfway
Yeah.
between
Century Mill.
where,
Yeah.
Century Mill
Yeah.
Road, and so,
All right,
So
so
it-
I'd have to make a special trip.
yes, you would. It's not like you can just take a peek in the front, like, at the beginning of the site, you would have been able to do
Well,
that.
I could walk downhill, but I mean, I walk the dog anyway, so, but I'm not gonna walk it that far.
Yeah, it's much more of a walk at this point.
I'd have to drive. I'll drive.
All right, so what do you think about moving forward with the idea of having somebody else professionally who can do site visits? Because I think if you want to do that, we need to focus on how we're going to do that and whether Andy's going to be willing to accommodate that, which is what they've done with the planning board.
I think it's a great idea. I mean, it seems appropriate based on this. But also great to have Jim sort of.
Yeah, I mean, I'm willing to do what I can. I'm also willing to acknowledge that it may not be good enough.
But it would be great for us, you know, for somebody among us to be really intimately familiar with this extremely complicated development.
Didn't we have Houghton on their crossing? The bridge, was there a consultant during that?
I don't think so.
No?
Not on our end. I mean, when this project first started, and the planning board was having Fred Hamwick go out to do their inspections, you know, we did talk to him about whether he would be willing to look at erosion control, you know, to just see, as the project was going forward, you know, if there was any need for improvements to that. And he also, as part of the planning board report, but it also bears to the Conservation Commission, he looks at whether the sediment traps in the catch basins are being maintained and cleared, and the street sweeping, stuff like that. But his role as an engineer is really to look at the stuff for the planning board.
Mm-hmm.
And he really wasn't, and I don't want to speak for him, but I don't think he felt as though he wanted to be in the position of looking at the stuff for the Conservation Commission, and whether it was doing work in the wetland or doing replication, and he's always sort of come back to me with, the questions on it. So I don't think that we could ask him, but I don't know that he would feel he's in the position to be that person either.
Ask him to take it from here.
Well, we've got to get a buy-in from Andy to do it, because it's not something that the town will be paying for, it's something that he would have to pay for.
This problem aside, I feel like the project's really very well run, so I have no problem with somebody being there. Really depends on how often and how that relates to cost, but.
How do you do it with the planning board in terms of figuring out the cost?
They have a schedule for work that Fred has a schedule of work that he wants to see before we bury it, so to speak. Like if we dig a trench and put in a pipe, before we cover the pipe up, he wants to inspect it.
So I don't know if your construction schedule for phase 3, for the crossings are specific enough that we could come up with that schedule or not.
I'm sorry.
I'm not sure if your construction schedules that you've given us are specific enough for us to figure that out at the crossings or not. I mean, that would be what I'd probably look at to try to base that, but.
It's not so much the schedule, it's the work. So, in other words, if we're putting in a footing for the arch of the crossing, before we install it, he wants to see that we've excavated down to proper material. So whether I say I'm doing it on a June 10th or it's June 20th.
No, I didn't mean a date. By that. I meant whether it was specific enough to the activities that are going to happen at the crossings that we would be able to pull it out from there. I didn't mean the dates. Well, you're saying, so has Fred given you that schedule, like he wants to see it at that point in time? Like, so
Yeah.
if we were to hire someone separate to do the wetland stuff, they would come up with a schedule then? Is that what you're saying? Of what they would recommend? And I'm saying that using your construction schedule would be the first step of looking at how to come up with that.
Yeah,
But I'm not sure it's specific enough to all the steps, like it doesn't necessarily say all the steps that would happen on a daily basis, so that may not be completely clear without.
Brandon's an expert at this point.
Well, I don't disagree. I'm just saying, again, he would.
Just from coming up with a schedule, would someone a botanist or wetlands scientist be able to come up with a schedule that says, you know, we want to inspect at this point and at this point. I don't think so.
And there's certainly more times that are more critical. I mean, just listening here, I mean, the issue though, to me seems less of inspections and more of an education process. I mean, you could have somebody go out there every single day and, you know, if something like this happens at 6:30 in the morning and nobody's there, you know, the bigger thing is making sure that I think the biggest thing is just defining these areas and putting a construction fence up and saying, hey, nobody can go in here. And
Yeah, but I don't disagree, but I do have the concern of them doing the work at both sites at this, around the same time. And that's the thing that I haven't really heard from you, whether or not it is gonna happen at the same time. I have concerns that there's not gonna be sufficient oversight of the wetland work, that an operator who gets hired and brought in decides to do a dewatering real quick and dirty, you know, and doesn't use the sediment bag. And again, I don't know that that's going to be an educational thing that you can do with just putting up fences. I think that there has to be some further oversight, you know,
Yeah,
really regular.
More than just fences. I mean, so to answer the initial question is, yeah, I mean, in the wetland replication guidelines, I mean, they kind of develop at what points they want a professional with 5 years minimum experience to be there, and those steps are identified. But then you've got these issues with things that just come up, dewatering and those. I mean, really, a lot of the stuff that you're looking at should be maintained by whoever is in charge of the SWIP plan. You know, on a daily basis, the erosion control should be checked by the site super, the sediment bed, you know.
So that's not really happening that way on a daily basis. What has happened was that the SWIP wasn't being implemented at all until recently, and it was revised. And this is stormwater pollution prevention plan. And my understanding, and Andy, you can tell me if I'm wrong, but that was Mike Carter was going to do site inspections on a weekly basis. So I'm not sure that there's anyone doing it on a daily basis. And that's what I mean by the site supervisor. The site is very large, and there's a lot of activity on it. And now there's going to be a lot of activity in two critical spots to the Conservation Commission. And I just feel like there's not going to be, Andy's not going to be able to be at both spots necessarily. And maybe he's not even going to be at either spot, you know, or maybe Hanu's not going to be at either spot, you know, and there's got to be someone who can be at these spots, you know, going back and forth even between them, you know, when this work is going on. At least that's my feeling.
It also seems like it's equally as important to be there when certain activities are going on, as well as when they're not supposed to be going on, to make sure that they're not going on, which is...
Right, but that's something that you can help with and I can do on the weekly basis as well. I mean, hopefully, you know, hopefully when they're done with the crossings, there's not going to be a lot of wetland-related issues, you know, because the lots don't have a lot of wetland stuff. So it's really, we're talking about, you know, the next few months of trying to make sure that our interests are protected. And I just have lost a lot of faith in that it's going to be able to be properly overseen that way.
So if we can come up with something while they're doing the critical phases, we have a professional daily, every other day.
Well, it may have to be, you know, daily certain days and every other day depending on what the work's being done, you know. He's going to be ordering the culverts at certain times, one's on site, the other one's coming, you know, they may not be doing both things at the same time, but
on a
so
general inspection, you say you only are able to get out there once a week.
Right.
That maybe just down a daily inspection if you're, you know, walking your dog that way.
Andy, do you know in a day or two in advance?
With some help in terms of what I'm looking for.
Right, well, Carol can...
Can you provide Carol with that information as you go along? We're going to be doing this and this Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And she can...
Not really.
No?
Well, I guess I thought that the way it worked with the planning board, and maybe I really don't know, but is that, they said, we're gonna need to have an inspector out there, and, you need to put up a certain amount of money, and that the inspector will put together, you'll work with the inspector to put up the schedule or whatever, and figure out when they're gonna need to be there, and, and then they'd go out and do the inspections. I mean, I guess that's all I'm really looking for, is to do something similar to that.
Well,
And I don't-
use Fred?
Well, we can ask Fred, I just don't know that he feels that comfortable with the wetland stuff. That's because we had that conversation before, and he was okay with doing erosion control, and he was okay with doing stormwater stuff, but he wasn't as comfortable with other wetland work. And as I said, in these recent site visits that we have, he defers to me on it, so I don't feel like he I don't know that he would be comfortable with that position. I mean, if he was, then he would be great. I mean, you guys like Fred enough that everybody works well with him, and, we like him, but, he gives us the reports and he copies you guys, and I would expect the same thing. Somebody would give the report, but, I just think, and we certainly love Brandon, so, I mean, if he thought it would be something that he could do, and, that he could report to the commission, then I don't really have a problem with that. It doesn't have to be somebody we don't know, or it'd be hard to get somebody up to speed. Anyway, I'd rather, do it with someone who knows the site and knows the issues we've had and all that, but.
I mean, I'm happy to have either Brandon, I know both of them.
Right. So how do we come up with an amount of money, and how do we figure out, like, when that would start? Like, how have you done it with the planning board?
There's a fund created, and as it's used up, they send me a letter and we replenish it.
So is it like a couple $1,000s, or is it?
Yeah.
That's what you usually start with? Okay.
I forget exactly what it is, but it's in that genre.
So, do we want to ask Brandon anymore while he's here, whether he thinks that that's something your firm could take on, or do you need to think about it?
Yeah, I could talk to Andy about it. It just, as long as he knows, that puts a little bit awkward.
Right, I know.
But I think if we talk about what those issues are, that's something that we can try, Do we want to do it? And define kind of what that scope is.
Yeah, I haven't really, I just threw it out to the commission late this afternoon as an idea, because, I was just trying to figure out how we can move this along without having any other problems.
It sounds like a good idea.
So maybe we can talk about it. You're not gonna be there on Thursday, or were you gonna be there on Thursday? Do you want to talk about it, Andy, then more on Thursday? If Mike wasn't going to be able to be there?
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
he's got something. He's up in Maine.
So maybe we need to wait till next week with him? There's nothing, so Mike was going to, just to also get back, so Phase 4, the construction schedule was very similar to what they had submitted during the winter. We talked about there's certain things that weren't completely relevant because of it being winter, but they may utilize some of the techniques if it's needed, like using the jute netting if the steep slopes needed it and we were getting thunderstorms or whatever. We talked about dewatering on the site. So we've kind of gone through Phase 4. Phase 3, how I had left it with Mike, and I can't remember if you were there when we discussed it, was that it was kind of cut and paste and sort of like my template, unfortunately, which some of the
same basic process.
Right, but we wanted to have something so that somebody on the site, whoever's doing Phase 3, whoever's ever doing that crossing, has exactly what they should have, that it's not go to sheet 52 and it's not sheet 52, it's really a different sheet, so Mike was going to correct some of the things that were cut and pasted from the other one, and he was going to look to see whether there were things that didn't apply or should be in there, and so I don't know whether, when he's going to be back and able to do that, but that's what I was waiting for.
He's back on Thursday, he just couldn't be there at 9.
Oh.
He could have done 1 o'clock.
Oh, okay, I don't know if Brent put in on it, but because at this point.
Brent couldn't do 1.
Okay. But so, and then he was also gonna get me all the information that Heritage has been looking at as far as the crossing. So we would need all of that information before approving Phase 3's schedule.
I'm not following.
He has plans that he's designed
Oh, you mean the
for the
culvert?
crossing, you know, with the grates and elevations and salamander barrier and all of that.
The salamander barrier is on the plan.
The same one, that's nothing's changed. Well, I just haven't seen whatever he's put together. He just
It's-
mentioned it at our
it's-
site visit,
it's
that he's
there,
got new
it's-
plans that he
yeah.
submitted to Heritage that, you know, one of the things he had mentioned, it's got like, I think maybe 4 grates over the top that Heritage Program wants to have daylight seen,
Yeah, for lighting.
or so that the animals can move underneath to the culvert and with the light. And so one of the questions that I had for Brent was during construction, which obviously Andy's interest is to be able to move material back and forth once the culvert's in, you know, how, is there, would we, you know, we would probably want to have some kind of sediment trap so nothing's going through the grate, you know? And so I don't have those plans yet to even look at them, but what I understood was that there's like 4 of them, and I suggested maybe we'd want something, and Mike was, I think, thinking something like you're using in the catch basins. You know,
I think the grates are sort of like a grate on a catch basin.
I think it goes right through.
Yes,
So, yeah, so, but it would be going right through into the stream.
that's what natural heritage.
No, but during construction, when you're still moving equipment back and forth, we don't want that to happen. We don't want the material. So one of the things I'd asked, so that was what I was asking him about, was he didn't have any problem during construction that we put, you know, have some kind of sediment fabric in there or self-sacs or
Right.
It
whatever.
really is like a catch basin grate, and you can use the same material.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, I mean, that's easy.
Right, but that's gonna have to happen, because otherwise you have a violation every day you bring a truck over. You know, so I mean, it has to work that way. And then, anyway, so I'm waiting to get the plans, and I'm waiting to get the revised sequence of construction from Mike Brown.
And did I see you guys had broken through to Century Mill Road? Or is that something?
Oh, actually, sorry.
There's always been a path off of Century Mill Road that we are using, and what we've been doing the last couple weeks is probing. Actually, the probing actually got started this week, but the site on that side is a significant amount of ledge. And so we're trying to identify how much ledge there is. In some ways, the more we find, from, I think, the commission's perspective, it'll be better. And the reason is because if you coming off of Century Mill Road, Century Mill Road is down here, and my property's way up high. So the plans call for a significant amount of, in order to come in from Century Mill Road, what you basically have to do is fold the land back and create gentle sloping. So it creates very large clearing swath. And what we've been doing out there now is we've cleared an area not nearly as wide as this swath, so that we could probe to see if there's ledge here. If there's ledge, fairly solid ledge, then you can do a vertical face, and you don't have to go 3-to-1 slope. So, but in order to do that, with the companies that do blasting, before they do the blasting, in order to give you a price, they probe, and they need to be able to move their track machines around, and and they want the loam off. They want you to basically uncover as much as you can to see if there's ledge, and then they come in and they want a fairly clean area.
Okay, so that's what I saw.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Carol, you're waiting for the plans that have been submitted to Natural Heritage, right?
Yes,
Okay.
Natural Heritage, the plans for the culvert on Road A, Natural Heritage approved.
Right, so you haven't seen those, correct?
I've only seen them, like Mike said, I have these plans that I'm working with, they weren't final when he showed me
Okay, so
them.
obviously we need to provide those to you, and you need the updated narrative.
Yeah.
Okay. Would it be possible to ask for a vote of the commission to seed you with the ability to give the go-ahead once you've had the chance to get that stuff reviewed, and after we get the natural heritage approval?
Which is what we did on phase 4.
Yeah.
July 1 is the date that we've been waiting a long time for in order to commence. And we have the summer's not that long, and matter of fact, we're allowed to work between July 1 under our order of conditions on this, and I forget what, it's a couple months, 2-3 months. So we want to start when we're allowed to start. As I'm sure you remember, we all spent a lot of effort and time trying to see if we could get it done in the winter time, and we eventually got to the point where everybody agreed we could do it in the winter, but then the winter sort of ended. So we're definitely biting at the bit to get going.
I'm sorry, so what was the request to?
My request is simply, we're waiting for the final natural heritage written approval. We're going to have that very soon. We expect to have it very soon. Carol wants to review the plans that have been submitted to Natural Heritage and will be approved by them as a part of their approval process. Obviously, she'd like to review them, but, it's fine. And the narrative was submitted, which was essentially very similar to the narrative for Road C, because it's the same basic deal, it's the same, but it's going to be updated a little bit.
The narrative for Road C was approved.
Yeah.
And that had
So this is the narrative for Road A,
crossing,
which has to be
and we were
updated.
building a road.
So the suggested motion is to empower Carol
Exactly,
to give the go-ahead.
right.
upon
Once she's
her approval
satisfied.
of the plans.
Right.
We did the same thing on phase 4.
We're almost there.
Okay, well, I would include in that, that there is money put up in front, not related to the bonds, because they've already got that in your schedule that you're gonna do, but for somebody to do the inspections on behalf of the commission on a regular basis, when the crossing work is occurring and the
If
wetland
it's going to be
application.
Brandon, wouldn't we pay him directly? Or would that come from you?
Well, again, that's the thing that we have to figure out. I'm gonna
Okay.
talk to Fred Hamway to find out whether he would be comfortable
That's
with
fine.
that. What I don't want to have happen is for Brandon to go out there and him feel a loyalty to Andy and say, I'm not letting them know about that crossing that they went through. That's not his, he doesn't want to be in that position.
Right.
We don't want to be in that position
Whatever
with
you
him.
want to work on.
But
That's okay.
we'd be happy if he was able to do it, I just don't want there to be a conflict. And typically, when you hire a consultant, you don't want that conflict. So I think you guys need to work that out a little bit,
Well,
whether
if
you can
it's a
do it or
couple
not.
grand to be put up with the town, that's fine.
Yeah, okay, well, I would say that,
It's already mentioned that.
if,
so
all right,
that's
but I
fine.
just want to make that part of the
Not a
motion.
problem.
I just don't want to do an, a reasonable amount of inspections. I don't want it to be like, $5,000 a month or something like that. To have somebody come out.
Yeah, well, that's why I was asking what you do with the plan board, because I have no idea.
Well, it doesn't cost that much. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
It's reasonable.
Right, well, I would hope that we would be reasonable. I'm not looking to be unreasonable. I mean, that's not my intention. My intention is to make sure that the resource areas are protected and that, somebody can be there when the work is happening and, to really see that there's not issues, and again, I just don't know what those critical times are gonna be as far as the culvert stuff goes. I mean, for example, and I'm not positive, is the salamander barrier put in first? That's the first thing that's done?
Actually, Natural Heritage didn't, they felt that it should go in a little later.
Okay, so
They felt like
whatever,
that-
so I was just gonna say, if that was the
the
first thing,
silk
then
fence was
we'd want somebody there when that was being done. If that's not the first thing, then we have to find out what the first thing
Right.
is, and then we figure out whether or not the person should be going out inspecting, and if it needs to be, once that day, or once, or a couple times, because they wanna see it, as it's progressed, then it would be that way. But, I'm not saying that somebody needs to
Right.
stand there for 8 hours, but they do need to understand what's going on and whether or not they feel as though the work is proceeding okay, and that there's enough oversight that's, it's not gonna, we're not gonna have a problem. That's the idea.
So back to your question then, that we should consider voting to give Carol power to make the decision based on the national.
To give the approval once.
If there is already this oversight issue has already been in place, right? I mean, if we've already got somebody.
Well, I'm saying that I would not, I think your motion would be to give me the authority to review the narrative for Road A and to approve that when it's satisfactory. And that I would also review any additional plans that have been generated for Road A's crossing to evaluate and make sure that that is something that's satisfactory and that we don't have any, other issues with it that need to come back to you. And that we would have, Andy would put up some money before they started doing any further work on the wetland crossing areas, which would be, we'd incorporate probably into the schedule.
So put up the money for the oversight? Is that what you're
Yes,
saying?
the oversight, right.
Okay. So we give you that authority if that oversight, if that is already in place, if he's already put it.
That's one of the criteria.
No, he would put that in place.
Three criteria.
He would put that in place.
Right.
Yes.
Otherwise, we wouldn't give the authority to start.
Exactly, that's what I'm trying to say, sorry.
Right.
Yeah.
It's too late.
Three pieces to the puzzle. though,
Yeah, okay.
As a prerequisite to
Okay.
moving forward.
I'll make a motion to say that. Just say all.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Terrific.
So I don't know if you guys feel like you want to take up any more time on the escrow release now. The only thing I would say about it, really quickly, is that Brandon gave a report of how the plants were surviving and so forth, and everything that he said in his report for the Aura areas was fine. One area, it wouldn't be 2 growing seasons, or it wouldn't be the end of the 2 years
Right.
until September. And then I don't have the amounts, like I have not had a chance to go back and look at what the amounts would be to release. So I can't, I don't have it on a schedule, to be signed off on to be paid, because it wasn't in Brandon's report and I just haven't been able to go back to that.
So those wouldn't be released until September?
Only
Those
one
would-
section. I think there was one section of one Aura that,
Well, I think it would be, I think we put up $10,000 for the second detention basin, and I believe it would just be 100% of everything else at this point. Remember, we did that.
well, I don't remember where the September thing came from. I just don't, I'm feeling like it's too late to go back through that as well.
You know what, it's
I mean-
late, why don't we just do it at the next meeting?
Right.
How's
Okay.
that?
And-
That'd be great.
I'm tired.
Yeah.
You too.
And we had Hershey's Kisses for dinner. so
Yeah.
we're a little crazy.
Okay, you, Conservation Commission, not completely done yet, so,
Oh, am I done?
yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, if you go back to that, the emergency order.
This one it?
Yeah, those were the originals, I just wanted to pass them around. And I will amend that, I'll amend them to take out that number 3.
Okay.
So I was approached by Harold Brown. The highway department's been doing some work where they're on the roads where there's been manholes that have dropped in the road a little bit. They've been cutting them and lifting them. And he did one down by you, Lori, last week. So just past East End Road and before Bolton Woods Way, they raised the manhole, which was in the middle of the road, and they just cut that out and then whatever they do. But that manhole leads to a culvert on the south side of 117, and at the road, it's starting to, the road itself is starting to cave in right up over the top of the culvert, and so he wanted to be able to put some riprap in to shore that area up, and requested that as an emergency because it's just falling apart. Right? And with the storms, I think it's, and now that they got the drain manhole, probably it might be more imperative that he get it done sooner. So that's what the work would be, it's just putting riprap in at the So I had it on to ratify, but I actually never issued it yet because I wanted to talk to him to make sure I was really clear about what he was doing, so you guys can just sign it, and then it's, as well. Oh God, we did the Tennessee Gas earlier, huh?
I know,
Yeah.
we just
I'm
pushed it off.
trying to observe that we're scheduling things at 15-minute headways.
Yeah.
When's the last time we did anything
We don't,
besides this?
we never
in
do.
15
You know, but the
minutes?
thing that the reason I said that is that, I mean, at least with the hearings, if you're ready, then you're not waiting, you know, and filling in necessarily, you
Yeah,
know, so.
would we ever have to though? Do we ever do it in less than a half hour?
Well, if you knew that you were just gonna do a site inspection or something, which, okay, so that leads me to another thing that's not completely on the agenda, but I'm gonna jump to it before we forget. I did ask, and only Brian responded, would you be willing to do any site visits before the July 15th meeting for a couple of the new hearings that are coming in? For example,
You sent us an email on this?
it was in your packet, email, yeah. Brian responded, so I know it was there. So, let's see, what did I have?
After that. Must have been after that.
I guess, you know, I know, so this first one, Rising Tides, 256 West Berlin Road, is a new lot. You know, they're proposing new work on it. And, you know, so if you wanted, I would give them the guidance to stake out the house, stake out the septic system, stake out the sort of the typical things that you usually ask for, and ask that to be prepared, you know, for whenever you would do the site visit, if we're going to be able to do it before July 15th.
So we would be doing this before we ever met with them here?
Right, and the reason was just that because we're only meeting once this month, and so if we meet on July 15th and then we tell them we want you to stake it out and go and do this, then we're having one meeting in August. So it's just, a lot of stuff is kind of getting backed up,
Well,
and I thought maybe that would...
As long as we know what we're looking for, because I'd hate to go out there and then have the meeting and then decide, oh, we need to see something else that we didn't think of.
Well, and if you do, you do. You know, I mean, it's just trying to help them out with it, to try to do it in advance. And I don't, honestly, I can't speak for all of you, so if you'd rather not and wait till July 15th and just tell them that you don't want to have the presentation first, that's fine.
It's a lot easier if you actually have a visual of what you're looking at.
First.
You know,
Yes.
instead of looking at a plan and
Right.
trying to figure it out, that
Right.
a
We
lot
may
of,
just
a
end up
lot of
going
your
twice
questions, you may not have the full answers while you're there, but once you look at it, when they start talking about
Right.
it.
You know, I've often wondered if it would be better to do things the other, you know, go see the site first and then sit down. I don't know.
I think
but sometimes-
I've done it both ways.
Yeah.
I actually think it's helpful to have the discussion in the meeting of what they're proposing to do, so that you're clear about what you're going to be looking at, even though it is helpful. I mean, even though I think it does change the time frame a little bit. Because I used to do them when I worked in Wayland, we used to do them beforehand, and you didn't necessarily get the full scope of what you were reviewing. So I guess I'm just, because of our once-a-month schedule, and I have a couple more applications that are still coming in, because the deadline's not until next week
Well, I
to get
wonder-
on this. One of them is a fairly simple homeowner project, and I talked to you about it, Janet. Somebody who wants to enclose a portion of their deck, and initially we thought it was just going to be one sonotube. It's within riverfront area, but they think it's really not a riverfront, and so, you know, I was trying to see how we could move it along faster, and in that particular case, again, you know, a homeowner's really trying to do something fairly small. There's an addition that blocks from the river, like where the enclosure is, so on a plan, it is within the resource area, but the actual construction is probably going to be really minor. So I thought, you know, in that case in particular, you know, if we could do a site visit beforehand, that would be easy. The one that's a new construction one, I partly have an interest in getting out there because I had an anonymous phone call saying that a neighbor had cut a lot of trees on a lot, and so I'm anxious to get out there, but whether I wait, I mean, it's not going to have changed, you know, probably.
Okay, and we ruled out the possibility of having another meeting? I mean, if we can find time.
Now we can't,
Okay.
because I won't be able to get all the notices
Oh.
in the newspaper within the right time frame. But at the time, no, I don't think that we did. I think I did check that, Janet, even with your availability. I don't think I had a quorum for that period.
Okay. Well, I don't have any problem to go.
I mean, I don't know that I looked at August that carefully. I could relook at August, but Lori's gone, I think was going to be gone for August. And so, you know.
I can visit sites during the week between the 7th and the 15th. I'll be back.
Mhm. So why don't I, when I get all the applications in, which should be middle of the week next week, why don't I send out a doodle poll to see, you know, if we could do them and tell you which ones I'm thinking. Like these ones that we have for the highway department, those would be nice as well. At least one of them's a new culvert that you probably might want to look at, you know. But let me put a list together of what I think, you know, we have coming in and see what you're willing to.
Okay.
How
do
easy is
beforehand.
it to do doodle polls on the cell phone?
Never tried it.
Probably not too bad nowadays.
Yeah.
Probably not too bad. Probably gets
Yeah,
easier
it's
every
probably
week,
not too
yeah.
bad, but anyway, so I jumped around on that one to add.
I will have this with me, I will not have the computer.
Okay. Well, see, if you know what, Jim, you can always text me and say, I couldn't do it, you know.
Well, that's true, I can always just.
Or you could even text me and say, these are the dates I could do, I
Right.
can't fill it in, can you just, you know, that's fine.
All depends on your profession, but what can you do on your computer that you can't do on your phone? Is there anything? Anything? Anything?
What I used to do for a living, I absolutely can't do on the phone.
Well, they say, like you said, depends on your, but you know, when you say when you're traveling, I won't have my computer on my phone. Well, that's the difference.
Run
Is there
visuals-
really a difference at all whatsoever?
Run Visual Studio, compile programs.
You probably even wrote that on your phone.
Do debugging? No, not with databases?
No, yeah, I know.
So, just, can I continue through some of the things that are on here, or do you want to identify them? I was just gonna say Pace on Sugar Road. I was told that that's coming in with the grass really well, but I wasn't able to get out there today when he stopped by to say that it was good. And so hopefully I can do that for the next meeting. And really by then, hopefully it should be pretty well growing in, you know.
I think so.
Five Star Dam, we had to reschedule our pre-construction meeting because the contractor wasn't able to make it. I'm still working on a date. It's just really hard with people's schedules at the moment. Erica and town and DPW and anyway, so we're hoping to get that sometime next week, and then come up with a new date for starting that work. We think that they can probably start to mobilize fairly quickly. They may, and I haven't had a chance to tell the contractor, but it looks like Army Corps of Engineers has like an June 30th date before they could start. So. But mobilizing, I think, still is not on the water, and I think they could get started sooner than that. So I left on here, anyway, Von Hill, I'm gonna get you a reminder, you know, that you've got that site visit. And they seem really nice, they seem like they're not doing anything, it seems like it was something that was old, but it also seems like it's something that they're not happy with either, you know, like the condition that it was left in, and so, I'll have to see. I have one bill. And I guess since we're not meeting till July 15th and you're giving me lots of power and authority, I do have, I don't have a lot of money left in our budget, but I do have some money for some supplies and for equipment and for the vernal pools. And I know the one thing I know that I had wanted to get was something for the vernal pool workshop, and I think I mentioned to you, but it's like sawhorses with like a light, you know, or something that we could add, or even just the light if I can't get the sawhorses in, depending on the cost and stuff. Because Vin Alfano had suggested that, yeah, that, you know, people are more familiar with a hazard, you know, barrier, and so that would help, you know, if we could get that. Right. I need to get like a catalog from him or DPW and find out, or have some time to Google it and spend some time searching for the kind of material, but I'd like to get that. And I always typically get some of the office supplies folders and things like that I need regularly at the end of the year, just to
Now I'm
stock up.
taking a class on Thursday that I haven't submitted the bill for because I haven't taken it yet.
Yeah, so we only have $34 left in training, and it's 100 and something usually, right? We do have money within our account, and what I've usually done is, you know, taken that and just, so long as I know that I have to have some money within, you know, a line item here. And then next year, we use that to say, look, you know, we went over. We needed more money in that budget, you know, and it helps us to sort of plan for it. So long as we have it in our baseline, and it's not huge amounts that we're talking about, I think
Would you get
there's never been a
reimbursed for
problem.
that, for the
Yeah, so we'd be able to do that, but your class is when?
Thursday.
Okay, so you need to get me the invoice for that.
I'll do like I did last time.
Yeah. Yeah.
forward you the email that Lindsay?
Confirmation.
Yeah, but I think we needed an invoice. Like, I don't think that the treasurer pays on just an email, you know, they wanted an invoice. Lindsay sent me the invoice.
Oh, she did?
Yeah.
Oh. Well, I didn't have anything to do with her sending.
Well, I think because you sent me the email and then I submitted it and they told me I needed an invoice. So I guess, can they give you an invoice at that meeting or?
No idea.
Okay, all right, so let me just write it in the notes here because I'm not sure how to remember it. Because I'm not in the office tomorrow, so invoice for Jim, what is the course? Wetland delineation, you said?
Wetland delineation for beginners. It's in Boxford at 8:30 in the morning. That's a weekday commute.
Yeah.
I haven't done a weekday commute in 6 months.
I want to hear.
Okay, so this is a bill from Henderson Stryker. This is for work that they did for us at Bower Springs, which included the whole day work part, not the whole day, but a long work party day that we did, and they helped to oversee that and mobilize everyone and educate everybody. Plus a walkthrough with me, preparing for that, figuring out what we were going to be doing. And if I have a little bit of money, they really wanted to get back out and do some mowing up there, so that might be the other thing I would try to do.
Or just not interview.
Yeah, yep. I also was hoping to get into the shed to see sort of what our wood supply is like. I know that there's a couple of boardwalks Rona's mentioned that we need to fix over at Von Hill. I know we have some wood there, but sometimes I've used some of the equipment money and bought some wood to have, just to have, you know, to be able to build the stuff as it's come up. What else? I didn't give you any minutes, and I can't remember if there's any other announcements that we want to fix. Just, you know, are you guys planning to go to the meeting next week, I guess? You're gonna be away,
26th?
the 26th?
Yes, that's next
I'm
Wednesday.
gonna try, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think it'll be taped, but it won't be live. So if you aren't able to go, but I guess, I think the more of us that hear the answers, the better it will be from our standpoint. Okay, so I'm done.
Okay.
Yay.
All right, we're done.
So just.
I just go to my Giants.
We'll-